Good morning. This is the English booth testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you.
This is Daria testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second session of the Leadership Dialogue of the United Nations Environment Assembly. As you know, the focus of this year's Leadership Dialogue is contribution of the environmental dimension of sustainable development to building a resilient and inclusive post-pandemic world. Today's dialogue will provide leaders and ministers of environment a platform for sharing their vision and ongoing environmental initiatives, which will contribute to building a resilient and inclusive post-pandemic world. Before we start, I would like to invite you all to watch a short video which will help us to visualize the impact the pandemic is having on our planet. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I now have the pleasure to invite Madame Bérangère Abba, State Secretary for Biodiversity of France and Vice President of UNEP Bureau, to set the scene. Excellency, Ms. Abba, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Joyce. Bonjour à tous. Je suis très honorée et émue d'introduire cette session du dialogue de haut niveau aujourd'hui en tant que vice-présidente du bureau de la NIE 5. Madame la directrice exécutive CNUE, chère Inger, chers membres du secrétariat du CNUE, merci pour vos efforts qui ont permis de tenir cette session dans les meilleures conditions, connaissant ce contexte. Aujourd'hui, donc, pour ouvrir cette discussion avec un message d'espoir et de détermination, je souhaite partager avec vous cette image du monde de demain, non seulement que nous souhaitons, mais qui nous appartient aujourd'hui de rendre possible et donc de passer à l'action ensemble. Notre humanité, elle est plus que jamais face à son destin. Au regard de l'histoire de la vie sur Terre, celle de l'humanité commence à peine et pourtant déjà elle est menacée et pire que ça, nous la menaçons. Par la faute de l'homme, nous sommes face à ce risque que nous-mêmes nous engendrons par aveuglement sans doute et aussi par inaction. Il y a 20 ans, lors du sommet de Johannesburg, le président Chirac avait eu les mots justes pour rappeler que notre maison brûlait. Elle brûle encore aujourd'hui. Il n'a jamais été aussi urgent d'agir. Nous ne pouvons plus détourner le regard. Et il nous appartient vraiment de nous mobiliser plus vivement que jamais. Alors, dans nos missions de chaque jour et de chaque instant, nous sommes au service de nos concitoyens et il nous est arrivé ces derniers mois, qu'importe le pays où nous vivons, de vivre des situations similaires avec la crise sanitaire, celle de ne pouvoir plus vivre comme avant, toutes ces peurs qui nous ont mis face à nos vulnérabilités, face à notre fragilité, à la fragilité de notre mode de vie et de notre quotidien, avec la peur parfois d'un non-retour dans ce dérèglement entre les équilibres et la nature et les activités humaines. C'est tout notre modèle, je crois, de civilisation qui est aujourd'hui questionné et sans doute nous met face à une prise de conscience qui est sans précédent. Alors aujourd'hui, évidemment, il n'est pas question de tourner le dos à nos responsabilités, mais d'y faire face avec espoir et détermination. Une détermination parce que les crises que nous traversons, celle du changement climatique, de la perte de biodiversité, qui menacent nos écosystèmes, elles sont amplifiées, elles s'accélèrent dans ce contexte de pandémie. Personne ne frappe aussi fort la nature que notre mode de vie et de consommation. Nous vivons avec sans doute une double illusion qui consisterait d'une part à penser que ces phénomènes sont exceptionnels et qu'ils sont
Some may think that these extreme phenomena are an exception. Some might think that this is something happening very far away, happening to others. But no, it is up to us to shoulder this responsibility. And of course, the last few months have been distressing, as they've shown just how our policies, environmental, our animal welfare policies, our health policies are inextricably linked. And also, of course, in the way in which our production and consumption patterns are having an impact on the situation. Thus, a cross-cutting approach is all the more necessary so that we can think about how to introduce a more transversal element into our policies. In September 2020, there was a decision made to hold an event on top of the various COP meetings to take place this year, because multilateral action must be effective, it must be coordinated. We need to create synergies and build on existing governance arrangements. That is how we'll be able to take coordinated action at the global level, thereby overcoming this challenge, which is an absolute must. All of us here stand determined to take action. After all, future generations will be judging us based on the choices we make today. I hope that we'll have the courage and enough hope to shoulder these responsibilities, partaking in multilateral action. The United Nations Environment Assembly is the highest environmental decision-making body. It's paving the way for coordinated and pooled global action. It's giving us an opportunity to come together around common objectives. We need to beef up our ambitious goals to take further action. We believe that we should act as a compass in our efforts to preserve the planet. The discussions we've had over the last few days, today and yesterday, and further discussions that will take place at this 5th Assembly will set the tone for other meetings that will take place this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency Abba. I now have the pleasure to invite Ms. Inga Andersen, Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme. Inga, you have the floor.
Thank you, Joyce. Et merci beaucoup à Madame Abba. C'est vraiment un grand plaisir de vous écouter. Vous avez souligné les transversalités entre le climat.
Thank you, Ms. Abba. It was a pleasure to listen to your statement. You underscored the link between biodiversity, climate change, and our production and consumption patterns.
Pick up where you, Madame, left off. Because if we do not take action, future generations do stand to inherit a hothouse planet with more carbon in the atmosphere than in 800,000 years. Future generations would live in sinking cities from Basra to Lagos, from Mumbai to Houston. Future generations would be lucky if they could spot a black rhino. And future generations would have to live in our toxic waste, which every year is enough to fill 125,000 Olympic swimming pools. So UNEP's Making Peace with Nature report that we issued last week. According to this report, the Earth's environmental emergencies must be addressed together, as we just heard from the minister, if we are to achieve sustainability. That means tackling that red thread that binds our emergencies together. Decades of take, make, and discard, i.e. that unsustainable consumption and production. And that means leadership. Leadership for the planet means trusting science. It means immediate action. It means living up to the global agreements. It means reinventing multilateralism. It means bringing everyone under the tent. It means scaling up actions through collaboration, solidarity, and international partnership. And it means leadership for the planet means making peace with nature. As we strive to end poverty and reach those sustainable development goals, UNEP will continue to play our role, bringing the environmental dimension of sustainable development to the fore, bringing the science policy dimension to the table, and supporting member states with capacity building and action on the ground. Many countries have already achieved a lot on the sustainability pathway, but it is clear that we now all need to step up the pace on achieving environmental sustainability, because we can stabilize the planet, but only if we work in the spirit of international solidarity, ensuring that we leave no one behind. I very, very much look forward to hearing the interventions today from the distinguished ministers and representatives who will speak in this dialogue. I remain certain that with clarity of vision, determination, and through multilateral action and international cooperation, we can stabilize the climate, we can live in harmony with nature, and we can ensure a pollution-free planet, but only by working together with common purpose in mutual solidarity. Let today's dialogue be a reflection of that global commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Inga. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I now have the pleasure to invite Mr. Afroz Shah, a guest speaker, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Shah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Joyce, for inviting me over. It's a pleasure to speak to various dignitaries, my brothers and sisters. I must begin my talk by saying that there are 4 things which is a major problem facing us. 1, we are too many on this planet at this point of time. Then the second is we consume a lot, which the planet can sustain. Third is we talk a lot than what we do. And fourth is there are too many followers and few leaders. I paraphrase my short 3-minute talk by these 4 sentences. This is where we need to look into. You see, when I started working cleaning the beaches, people thought it must end at a beach cleanup. Cleaning beaches means clean beaches. But what we did was, we took the barrel up, top to bottom, bottom to up. It's a combination of that. So what it required is, you get corporates, you get policymakers, the legislatures, in fact, the judicial system as well, to understand what is going on the ground. You see, pollution has reached unprecedented proportion. In Mumbai, we have 19 beaches. None of them we can step onto. I cannot even put my hand into that water. Imagine what a trauma it is to live on a beach and not even put your hand into it. Our mangroves are choking with plastic. You see global warming, climate change, but what is the solution to all this? Leaders who are here in a capacity as ministers and legislators who will make, of course, good laws. We assume they will make good laws, but the implementation is the key here. The obedience to good law. A law is as good as the citizens are obedient to it. Every citizen who's here on this planet creates some sorts of pollution. Either it's a global warming, plastic pollution, or troubling the other species. Now, how do you balance these rights? See, the problem is our rights are weighing too heavily on the rights of the other species. This delicate balance will have to tilt in favor of the other species, and that is the key. We talk about we want to live healthily, we want to consume. Our children should have the best education. Our children should have the best food. Do we ever think what would a child of a whale or a child of a turtle or a child of a tortoise, what do they undergo because of our lifestyle and our consumption pattern? As Madam Inga rightly pointed out, this is what we need to collaborate on. Leaders who are listening to me here, and the citizens who are listening, we must collaborate. This era is about collaboration. And when I say collaboration, I paraphrase my talk with those 4 things. One is we need to do more rather than talk. This world talks a lot about environmental pollution. I'm not that old on social media. If you go, we keep on hearing stories of what we should do, what we should do, what we should do. Very few people come up and say that we have done this, hence we protect the planet this way. And this must reach to every 7 billion inhabitants of this planet. If you don't reach out to them, there will be a big, big problem. And each one must be told that you must begin your journey from being a polluter to a protector. There must be a paradigm shift in the narrative. We all call ourselves polluter because the way we eat, the way we consume, the way we lead our lifestyle, we must move. I started cleaning the beaches during pandemic, and we have to link up the right of livelihood of poorer section of the society with right to sustainable development goals. Right to clean environment must be closely linked to the right to livelihood of this poorer section. I would urge you, leaders who have already framing good laws everywhere, this collaboration must be enhanced. And as Madam Inga pointed out, the collaboration must be scaled up massively to tackle what we see on the planet Earth. Otherwise, you see, we'll be talking again after 5 years, maybe in a far worse condition. Another 10 years in far more worse condition. We'll see our oceans lost, our lakes gone, our rivers gone, our forests gone, and then you have this health pandemic on ahead. So collaboration is the key. We should start doing that. And the key, another key is involving everybody at the ground level. Otherwise, see, we'll keep on debating about it in 5-star hotels, conferences hall. We'll talk about problem, we'll talk about solution. Tell me which person on this planet Earth doesn't know what the pandemic was all about. This zoonotic disease, what are they? Everybody has got a mask on. Everybody fears for its health. Now the stage has come post-pandemic to take that further. And I think if we collaborate all of us together, the leaders, the citizens, the corporates, it'll be a wonderful partnership to protect the planet. Thank you very much for having me here, Inga Madam. Thank you everybody for listening. And hopefully we'll see more of this collaboration between citizens, governments, corporates, and the policymakers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shah, for your inspiring words. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, as we have heard from our Executive Director, the Making Peace with Nature report released on the occasion of UNEP presents compelling scientific data on why we have to tackle the 3 planetary crises: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. The scientific assessments synthesized in this report shows that we have the knowledge and ability to meet these challenges through renewable energy, sustainable food systems, and nature-based solutions. In short, nature is our ally to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. With this in mind, I now have the pleasure to open the interactive part of the leadership dialogue. We are going to hear from ministers of environment, stakeholders about their ideas, their initiatives to bring the environmental dimension in their plans to building back better. I would like to remind the speakers to kindly limit your contributions to 3 minutes maximum. We have a timer on the screen to help us keep the time. I now have the pleasure to invite the following ministers: Excellency Roberto Cingolani, Italy; Excellency Mohamed Mubarak bin Daina, Bahrain; Excellency Sonam Wangdi, Bhutan; Excellency Rafael Nakachinda, Zambia; and Excellency Zach Goldsmith, the United Kingdom. Italy, you have the floor.
So, Mr. President, Mr. Director, colleagues, and delegates, thank you for this opportunity. I wish to thank UNEP Presidency and UNEP for organizing this meeting in such a difficult year, crucial for the climate and the environment future. Well, in response to the COVID-19 crisis, we have to rethink and redesign our economy, our societies. We have to accelerate the green transition and increasing resources efforts and multilateral cooperation towards a decarbonized, more resilient and sustainable world and society. Actually, the pandemic has clearly demonstrated the relationship between humans and nature. The well-being of our ecosystem is an essential factor for health and economical prosperity, and this is now clear to everybody more than in the past. I appreciate very much the holistic approach of UNEP. The new medium-term strategy facing the triple crisis of climate, pollution, and loss of biodiversity. This needs a lot of efforts from our sides. This approach will also inspire the Italian presidency of the G20, which will be based on 3 pillars, as usual: people, planet, and prosperity. We will emphasize the interconnections between global challenges and solutions along the line of the 2030 agenda and in a synergistic way with the COP26 that we will co-chair. The environmental ministry meeting, back-to-back with the climate energy meeting, will focus on the efficient use of natural resources and the transition towards a circular economy. In this regard, we welcome the Global Alliance on Circular Economy and Resource Efficiency that has been launched recently and that we will actively support. We believe in the potential of national and global action plans for the circular economy, covering the entire product cycle from eco-design to recycling. Italy has done a lot in this field, implementing and planning investments, tax incentives, to minimize costs for the most vulnerable regions and most fragile economies and companies. At the occasion of its 50th anniversary, UNEP is well equipped to confirm its leadership at a global level, a leadership that shall be innovative and creative. And since my background is in science, I'm not a politician, just a scientist momentarily in this adventure. I believe that technology and innovation will be the engine of the ecological transition, but they must be used in a fair and reasonable manner for the future. As policymakers, we need to nurture knowledge and awareness in our societies to make sure that future generations will inherit a better world. And that will be my personal commitment on the future challenges. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Bahrain, you have the floor.
Hi, sorry for the delay. Thank you very much for having me here today. As I think the environment is in the heart of the development vision and plans for several countries in West Asia. Unfortunately, the pandemic has severely disturbed the economic growth and focus on response of the health crisis. The vulnerable countries affected by conflict are hit the most, I believe. We already have indicated that number of SDGs will not be achieved. However, it shows that the nature and the environment system will recover if the development pressure are lifted. And there are many innovation ways to reduce our carbon footprints. It gives boosts to digital transformations. These topics were debated during the first ministerial meeting held by Bahrain on 18th of August 2020 and organized by UNEP Regional Office for West Asia. Ministers called for development and implementations of policies, strategic plans to build back better for more innovation, inclusive and greener social economical development. They further reiterate that sustainable consumption and production pattern will help in building a region where humanity is in harmony with nature. And we call upon nations to raise awareness and support environmental institutions and authorities to achieve such harmony. This year has been dedicated in Bahrain to set a regional and national priorities and action plans building better. And in Bahrain, we have three initiatives that were being launched. The National Air Quality Strategy, Assessment of Sustainable Consumption and Production, and National Adaptation Investment Plan, and especially concentrating on the sea level rise. A critical issues we have to address as small island developing states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Bhutan, you have the floor.
Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, let me thank the President and the Bureau for convening the 5th UN Environmental Assembly despite the challenges amid the pandemic. Bhutan also places on record its appreciation on their decision to have the 5th UN Environmental Assembly in a two-step approach of a virtual meeting and an in-person session of the UNE5 in February 2022. We cannot emphasize enough on the challenges and difficulties of negotiating virtually. I would also like to thank the UN Environmental Programme Secretariat for all the preparation and hard work for this important meeting. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of the 5th UN Environment Assembly, Strengthening Actions for Nature to Achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, is timely when the world is reeling under the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, there is better understanding of the destabilizing impacts of our progress and development on the planet. Human development should not happen at the expense of the planet. Science is clear on the disastrous impacts of our current pace of development. Transformation in the pathways to human development is imperative to seek a different route, one where the power humans wield over the planet is used to regenerate, not destroy, so the humans and the planet thrive together. Therefore, the link between environment and development and the work undertaken by this body remains key in our pursuit of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Bhutan is a small, landlocked, least developed country. We have immense development challenges. However, finding the right balance between the pursuit of social economic development and protection of our environment has been at the heart of our development approach based on the development philosophy of gross national happiness. We embarked on the journey of conservation as early as the 1960s in tandem with the initiation of 5-year development cycles. The need to conserve our forests and nature is codified in our Trimjung Chempo, the Supreme Law enacted in 1959. Bhutan designated Manas Wildlife Sanctuary as the first protected area in 1966. Today, we are the only carbon negative country in the world with 72% forest cover and 51.44% of the country secured as protected areas and biological corridors. Our forests sequester 3 times our emissions, providing global mitigation and other ecological benefits such as habitats for an extensive range of biodiversity, fresh water, and livelihood for many of our rural communities. Bhutan is aspiring to graduate from the LDC status in 2023 and currently addressing the last mile challenges to build a strong foundation for a vibrant, resilient, and sustainable economy towards achieving the SDGs. We are also committed to remain carbon neutral and required to preserve 60% forest cover for all time through our Constitution. However, we are deeply concerned about the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, creating new and serious health and other socioeconomic challenges and compounding existing ones, especially in the vulnerable countries, including the LDCs, undermining our efforts to achieve the SDGs. We are determined to stay the sustainable course, and we hope to stimulate greater global ambition for more nature by 2030. Additionally, our development plans have been reprioritized to optimize resource allocation to ensure sustainable social economic recovery. However, support from the global community is imperative to enable us to maintain the achievements thus far and progress further. At the global front, Bhutan, as the LDC chair at the UNFCCC climate negotiation, leads and facilitates 46 least developed countries in enhancing their climate efforts towards mitigating the adverse climate change impacts. But despite all our efforts, we are victims of the impacts of climate change, extreme weather phenomena, increased frequency of natural disasters, glacial lake outbursts, flash floods, windstorms, and landslides pose present and real danger. Climate change makes extreme weather events even more frequent and more intense. Now, because of the pandemic, they come at a time when national economies are crashing and ordinary people are stretched to their limits. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, countless lives and livelihoods have been affected. Millions have lost jobs, and economies have come to a standstill. We have been dealing with multiple shocks from both the COVID-19 pandemic and the existential threat of climate related impacts. The world's poorest and most vulnerable are the hardest hit. Global and common environmental challenges such as climate change and the current pandemic only serve to remind us that in an interconnected world, our approach to development must be holistic. The need for global solidarity is compelling, and the developed world must honor their commitments to provide financial and technical support for the poorer countries to battle the impacts of climate change. To conclude, the pandemic is rolling back decades of progress on poverty, gender, and health, and others. However, the pandemic gives us an opportunity and an opening to recover better. We now have a tremendous, once in a lifetime window of opportunity for genuinely transformative green recoveries to deliver stronger climate, sustainability, health, and economic outcomes. Countries must be mindful of high carbon footprint and increased developmental pace post COVID and remind ourselves in turning around from our unsustainable consumption and production systems. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Zambia, you have the floor.
Zambia, kindly raise your hand.
Thank you very much. Honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to begin with, on behalf of the Zambian delegation, to express our profound gratitude to you, Mr. President, and your team for the excellent organization of this online meeting of the fifth session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly being held under the theme Strengthening Action for Nature to Achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Allow me also to thank the organizers of the Leadership Dialogue, whose aim is to promote an interactive, high-level discussion on the contribution of the environmental dimension of sustainable development to building a resilient and inclusive post-pandemic world. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the 5th session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly being held at a time when the global community is under siege as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has impacted on the world's economies and societies in general by slowing down the development processes. It has also brought untold misery among our people and contributing to increased poverty levels. But on a positive note, however, the pandemic has given an opportunity to humanity to change the way we do things and to do them better under challenging times. Therefore, as we rebuild our country's economies, we need to reflect on past actions towards nature, adopt sustainable livelihoods, and build back better to increase the resilience of our nations and communities to adverse impacts of future pandemics. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Zambian government has mainstreamed actions to conserve and protect nature into the National Development Plan and the Vision 2030. For instance, the country's Vision 2030 sets the vision on environment and natural resources as a productive environment, well-conserved natural resource for sustainable socio-economic development by 2030. By this sector vision, Zambia is resolved to ensure that we protect our environment and natural resources as we pursue our economic development. You may wish to note that my government has adopted a multi-sectoral approach in the implementation of our National Development Plan. Policies, strategies, and programs on the protection of our environment. This approach has also not only enhanced efforts in conservation of ecosystems and protection of the environment, but has also enhanced environmental integrity, which is key for socio-economic development and prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my government is finalizing the development of a strategic environmental assessment regulation. The strategic environmental access regulation, once adopted, will provide a framework to integrate environmental consideration in decision-making at every stage of development and implementation of policies, plans, or programs. The CEAs facilitate a strategic oversight guidance to the environmental impact access for project development implementation, which results into enhanced environmental integrity. On the biodiversity front, my government is implementing the second National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan for the period 2015 to 2025. This action plan was aligned with emerging national development priorities and the Global Biodiversity Strategy Plan for the period 2011 to 2020. The revised strategy has set 18 targets which are being implemented by a wide range of stakeholders at country level to contribute to the attainment of the overall objectives of the Vision 2030. The 7th National Development Plan and the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, Government has also continued to provide policy leadership by implementing the wetland policy of 2018 and other ecosystem-based adaptation initiatives. The implementation of the policy and other ecosystem-based adaptation initiatives have contributed to strengthening institutional capacity and improving the management of wetlands ecosystems that support community livelihoods, thereby reducing vulnerability to climate change. We have also prioritized waste management interventions. In this vein, the country has continued to implement the Solid Waste Regulations and Management Act of Act number 20 of 2018 and the statutory instrument number 69 on extended producer responsibility for plastics in accordance with the provisions of the Environmental Management Act number 12 of 2011. The implementation of these interventions have improved solid waste management and service provision for the protection of public health and the environment countrywide. At the core of the implementation of these interventions is the development of innovative strategies to promote investment in solid waste management as a business with emphasis on social inclusion by decentralizing waste collection and management in line with the Keep Zambia Clean, Green and Healthy campaign, which was relaunched by His Excellency, President of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Edgar Chagwa. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the government, under the able leadership of His Excellency, the President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa, has put in place the National Water Supply and Sanitation Policy 2020, which provides a framework that promotes and facilitates universal access to water supply and sanitation services. The policy outlines priorities, area for action at various levels with regard to planning, resource allocation, and the implementation of national development programs to achieve satisfactory service provision necessary for the protection of public health and the environment. Through implementation of the policy and pieces of legislation on water resource and catchment protection, namely the Water Resource Management Act number 21 of 2011, the country has been able to protect watersheds and prevent encroachment in fragile ecosystems such as wastelands and protected areas. Zambia has also taken the challenge of climate change seriously and has put in place a necessary policies and legislative framework for coordinated response in addressing this challenge. Climate change, mitigated and adaptation measures have been mainstreamed in our five-year medium-term national development plan that runs from 2017 to 2021. Mainstreaming of climate change promotes social well-being, including better health, growth of the economy, and at the same time reduce environmental risks. Further, government is implementing the nationally determined contribution NDC with a view to reduce emission of greenhouse gases by 38,000 gigatons of carbon equivalent and to facilitate the country's transition into low carbon and climate resilient pathway by the year 2030. As I close, allow me to state that His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zambia is very passionate about environmental protection. In his State of the Nation address held just a few days ago on the 12th of February 2021, the President emphasized on the need to plant more trees, use of clean and smart energy such as solar, to avoid use of charcoal, which leads to discriminatory cutting of trees. The President said, and I quote, "We owe it to the prosperity to conserve a pristine environment and biodiversity," end of quote. This is clear testimony of passion and environmental leadership from the highest office of our land, Zambia. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. Excellency. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellencies, Chair, distinguished delegates. At the UN General Assembly, the United Kingdom Prime Minister announced a 5-point plan to protect humanity against another pandemic. At its heart is a recognition that our broken relationship with the natural world increases the likelihood of deadly zoonosis like COVID-19. But we also know that the impacts of climate change and environmental degradation will utterly dwarf even this appalling pandemic. Deforestation is increasing, ocean health and abundance is rapidly declining, 1 million species face extinction, including 2 out of every 5 plants. Now, if these trends continue, we will pay a terrible price. Indeed, the impacts are already being felt. Today, almost 1 billion people are dealing with hunger, and unless sustainable land use goes mainstream, that number will inevitably rise. As ever, it will be the poorest who suffer first and worst as the free but wildly undervalued services that nature provides begin to fail. So turning this trajectory around is the defining challenge of our age. First and foremost, we need to recognize that there is no path to net zero, or indeed to the Sustainable Development Goals, that does not involve protecting and restoring the natural world on an unprecedented scale. Nature-based solutions like mangroves, peatlands, forests can provide around 1/3 of the most cost-effective solution to climate change, as well as protecting lives and livelihoods and helping nature recover. So as presidents of both the G7 and COP26, the United Kingdom has put nature at the heart of our response, both to poverty and to climate change. Over the next 5 years, the UK will invest at least £3 billion in nature-based solutions to climate change. And we're asking other donor countries to step up as well. We're leading alliances committed to protecting at least 30% of the world's land and ocean by 2030, essential to realizing the ambition of the Leaders' Pledge for Nature to put biodiversity on a road to recovery. We're asking countries to commit to shifting agricultural policies and support towards protecting rather than destroying the environment, and to work with us to clean up global commodity supply chains that are responsible for most deforestation. No government yet is doing enough, but if we work together, governments, businesses, civil society, we can flip the immense power of the market away from destruction towards renewal and sustainability. We each have a duty now to make this the year that we catalyze a decade of action to profoundly reset our relationship with the natural world. And UNEP's role is therefore more important than ever. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, for all your contributions. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I now have the pleasure to invite the following ministers and UN Goodwill Ambassador. Excellency Sussan Ley, Australia. Excellency Mukhtar Babayev, Azerbaijan. Excellency Fahed Al Hammadi, United Arab Emirates. Excellency Daina Augutis, Lithuania, and Mr. Dawuni, UN Goodwill Ambassador for Environment, Africa. You each have about 3 minutes max. Australia, you have the floor. Thank you.
Of the UN Environment Assembly and distinguished delegates. Thank you, Mr. President, the UN Environment Programme Secretariat, and all the delegates here today for your work to make this happen despite the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic. Australia has a proud history of working with the UN Environment Programme to progress the global environmental agenda. As one of the world's 17 mega diverse countries, Australia recognises the crucial importance of protecting our natural environment and biodiversity, not just for Australians, but for the global community. In addition to the challenges of the global pandemic last year, we faced a devastating bushfire crisis which burnt over 24 million hectares of land and put more than 300 threatened species in the path of the fires. As a result, our approach to COVID-19 recovery incorporates our ongoing recovery from these severe events. We are committed to the recovery of native wildlife and their habitat in response to fires. A $200 million fund was set up, which includes strategic on-ground support for the most impacted native species and projects to engage local communities in conservation. Our COVID-19 response also extends to other critical areas. In December, Australia joined with other member countries of the High-Level Panel for a Sustainable Ocean Economy to launch a transformations framework, which sets out an achievable plan to utilise the ocean in a sustainable manner with a focus on COVID-19 recovery. Australia is also committed to transforming our waste and recycling industries domestically to develop a circular economy and move away from unsustainable consumption habits. From January this year, we are phasing in bans on the export of unprocessed waste streams such as glass, plastic and paper. It's our waste. It's our responsibility. The Australian government is driving a $1 billion transformation of our waste and recycling industry. Through our Recycling Modernisation Fund, we will divert over 10 million tonnes of waste from landfill. Protecting our environment and the unique qualities of our national and world heritage sites is also a focus of Australia's post-pandemic recovery. We are providing significant funding to support and enhance our parks and heritage areas with record spending for national parks upgrades and investments that preserve and enhance our World Heritage areas. Australia is investing more than $15 billion in climate science, adaptation and resilience activities. We are focused on advancing practical, scalable and commercially viable technologies to support a sustainable economic recovery from COVID-19. Australia looks forward to continuing to work with the global community to address the most pressing environmental challenges that we face today. Thank you, Mr. President and fellow delegates.
Thank you very much, Australia. Azerbaijan, you have the floor.
And healthy through these unusual and challenging times. First of all, let me express my appreciation to the Secretariat of the United Nations Environmental Assembly for organizing this important event. Today, there is a great need for joint efforts of international community to counter COVID-19 pandemic. The government of Azerbaijan has released the socio-economic and financial support package over $2.5 billion to counter the negative impact of pandemic. The social support measures cover nearly 5 million people, which are half of country population. Since the outbreak of pandemic, Azerbaijan is in close contact with the World Health Organization. We are grateful for its valuable recommendations and its expert support in the early days of pandemic. Our country has made 2 voluntary contributions to the World Health Organization in the amount of $10 million. In the meantime, Azerbaijan has provided humanitarian and financial assistance to more than 30 countries in the world. In terms of environmental protection, special attention is given to increase the forest cover, which play a special role in preventing lung diseases. Some tree species, mainly pine trees, emit phytoncides that contribute to reducing the infections of diseases. In recent years, millions of trees have been planted throughout the country, and this activity is ongoing. Azerbaijan has joined the Bond Challenge with the commitment of bringing 270,000 hectares forest land into restoration by 2030. Dear colleagues, 2020 was a year of challenges, but at the same time, Azerbaijan opened a new page in its history by putting an end almost 30 years of Armenian occupation of our ancient land, Karabakh. Environmental and infrastructure of liberated lands has been heavily damaged during these years. But now Karabakh is entering a new period, marked by total recovery works that will reshape the outlook of the whole region. Smart city and smart village concepts will be the basis of planned construction. Rich water resources, sun and wind energy potential of the region will be used to generate green energy. In this regard, we call upon the broad environmental community to participate in evaluation and restoring the unique ecosystem of the region and bringing it back to life. Sustainable recovery from current situation related to the pandemic requires solidarity and cooperation of the world community. I believe that UNEP 5 will contribute to the global fight against the disease and will make us more united around our common goal. In these difficult times, for all of us, I wish you strong health and success in your efforts to make the world a safer place. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. United Arab Emirates, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of United Arab Emirates, I reaffirm our commitment in integrating the environmental dimension of sustainable development into the post-pandemic recovery efforts. The COVID-19 pandemic should not slow us down in transition toward a resilient and inclusive green economy. Instead, it can catalyze the transition. In the midst of the recovery effort, the UAE strengthens its commitment to climate actions and proceed to submit its enhanced national determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. The NDCs reflect UAE ambition in both mitigation and adaptation. Specifically, the UAE's NDC highlight our target to reduce greenhouse gases emissions by 23.5% compared to business as usual for the year 2030. By then, the UAE aims to expand its clean power capacity to 14 gigawatts, rising from just above 100 megawatts in 2015. In boosting nature-based climate solutions, the UAE commits to plant 30 million mangroves by 2030 to conserve and enhance coastal blue carbon ecosystems. Given the UAE harsh desert climate and scarce water resources, we are also exploring innovative climate-smart agriculture and sharing knowledge and technology with our neighbor facing similar challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us to live in harmony with our environment. To enable this, the UAE has recently adopted two landmark policies: the environmental policy to facilitate the implementation of sustainable development goals, and the circular economy policy to optimize the use of resources and reduce waste, thus promoting sustainable production and consumption. These policies complement UAE ongoing efforts on green growth, biodiversity conservation, and protection of ecosystems. As a country grapple with the triple challenges brought by pandemic, climate change, and a global recession, and numerous opportunities for stronger international cooperation are emerging. We are already witnessing remarkable effort by the world's scientists working together to develop effective vaccines. Countries are committing to science-based ambitious emission reduction targets. International organizations are rallying together to provide technical assistance and financial aid to the most vulnerable countries. It is notable that in striving to build back better, governments are being strongly supported by the private sector, where there is a renewed focus on sustainability and resilience. As the climate impact mountain our ecosystem came under increasing pressure, we need to double down. We need to double down our effort to protect the planet and support those most at risk. As a small yet ambitious and responsible nation, the UAE will continue to play an active role in the international community in sharing knowledge and resources to help build a resilient post-pandemic future that leaves no one behind. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Excellency. Lithuania, you have the floor.
Dear colleagues, the COVID-19 crisis once more highlighted the importance of biodiversity and healthy ecosystem services for human health. The crisis reminded us that biodiversity and ecosystem services are vital for fostering human health, maintaining quality of life, and providing recreational services, safeguarding from natural disasters, improving emotional well-being of society, especially during lockdowns, or even preventing the future pandemics. We believe that our ecosystems are inseparable from our economies and societies. That's why urgent actions to protect and restore biodiversity are critical for economic recovery. These actions ensure well-functioning ecosystems and their services in the future. The efforts to preserve and restore biodiversity and healthy ecosystem services can't be successful if only governmental institutions will be involved. Public awareness, stakeholder involvement, and market-driven conservation schemes can play a major role in helping to achieve conservation targets. Therefore, Lithuania is seeking to ensure better conservation and restoration of ecosystems and their services by integrating global strategic documents into decision-making. In particular, we are going to focus on forests and wetlands. These ecosystems in our climate zone are critical for biodiversity conservation and in combating climate change. Our priority is to develop national agreement on forests in 2021. It will determine long-term forest policy to ensure sustainable use and protection of natural forest habitats and rare species in the forests. We plan to expand forest lands. In the next 4 years, the forest will cover more than 35% of Lithuania's territory. All identified high conservation value forests owned by state in Northern Europe, they are known as woodland key habitats, will be protected under the new voluntary forest certification scheme. We are planning to restore degraded wetlands and their valuable services. Our commitment by 2024 is to enlarge national coverage of protected areas to reach 20%, a quarter from which would be strictly protected. To improve management of these areas, we need to review current legislation, upgrade competent institutions, use data-driven decision-making process, and show benefits of our efforts to stakeholders and public. These measures will put our nature and climate at the core of recovery and acceleration of green and resilient economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Mr. Dawuni, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored for the opportunity to address you today. This gathering has occurred at a time when our world is undergoing challenges that has disrupted our normal way of life. Now more than any time in recent history, there is an urgent need for alignment of our collective purpose. We are at a moment in time when every decision taken by an individual, community, or nations has to be viewed within the context of its impact and effect on the planet and how it affects other species and ultimately our species. This has shown that solutions will require an inclusive approach, employing effective and new forms of communication and engagement to change the existing mindset from that of apathy to action. There is a need to catalyze action on conservation, promoting reforestation, climate action, landscape restoration, equipping people with the basic tools to weather the shocks of the pandemic. The inclusion of various influential voices and the participation of the youth will be key. In my role as Goodwill Ambassador, I have observed the pandemic and its effect on the informal economic sector in many African countries. Against a backdrop of geopolitical issues that continues to plague effective interregional cooperation and also has hampered the ability to build the needed consensus in this current situation. My advocacy has been to encourage self-sufficiency, promoting a culture of wellness and revisiting indigenous practices, reclaiming the knowledge base for dealing with inevitable issues of food scarcity, promotion of farming among the youth, and advocating for gardening as a key factor to equipping many vulnerable populations with the knowledge to grow their own food. Through the Rocky Dawuni Foundation, I have focused in the area of youth leadership and have initiated a training system for youth leaders who will be primed to manage emerging opportunities in the green economy. I also launched a tree planting initiative that aims to put 100,000 trees in various communities to spark model forests that would facilitate enlisting new environmental leaders. The first one is planting of 100,000 trees in the capital of Accra in collaboration with the mayor of Accra. Secondly, a 10-acre, 100,000 tree Miyawaki Forest Initiative to protect natural wetlands in the town of Bumbon in northern Ghana. The third is a planting initiative in collaboration with the paramount chief of Ekuapim Nifa to plant 100,000 trees in the historic town of Edukro. Our deeds must transform into actions, and our actions into the building blocks for a sustainable future. We have gathered here as ambassadors of hope and architects of a new paradigm, and our work together and in harmony with nature will ensure our ultimate victory. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dawuni. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is now my great pleasure to invite the following ministers for their interventions. Excellency Kondo Tomohiro, Japan. Excellency Piernel Charles Jr., Jamaica. Excellency Milis Munt, Estonia. Excellency Mario Siljeg, Croatia. And Excellency Jassim Abdulaziz Hamadi Al Mohammadi, Iraq. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. President, Executive Director, colleagues, I'm Kondo Tomohiro, Vice Minister for Global Environmental Affairs, Minister of Environment, Japan. I'm honored to deliver this speech on behalf of the government of Japan at this important occasion. In September last year, Japan held a ministerial meeting of the online platform on sustainable and resilient recovery from COVID-19. Discussions at the ministerial meeting was aligned with the theme of today's dialogue. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the many representatives of national and regional governments and stakeholders for their contribution to the ministerial meeting and the platform website. During that ministerial meeting, we acknowledged that the recovery from the pandemic requires a redesign of our socio-economic system based on the transition to a decarbonized society, the transition to a circular economy, and the transition to a decentralized society. In line with this, Japan would particularly like to pursue with UNEP discussions on the issue of marine plastic litter and biodiversity. In response to the UNEP resolution, there was a series of meetings of the ad hoc open-ended expert group on marine litter and microplastics. Japan chairs the fourth meeting and compiled a chaired summary. I would like to express my gratitude to New Zealand for chairing the preceding 3 meetings, as well as to the participating countries and the UNEP Secretariat. Japan will further strengthen its contribution to solving marine plastic litter issues as we move towards the resumed session of UNEP 5 in February next year, where substantive matters will be negotiated. Furthermore,
Japan has been cooperating closely with UNEP Regional Office and UNEP International Environmental Technologies Tech Center to conduct surveys on marine plastic litter and provide technical assistance on waste management to developing countries. With regard to the biodiversity, we foresee that the post-2020 global biodiversity framework might include areas beyond the CBD mandate, taking into account the nexus between biodiversity and other dimensions of sustainable development. As such, we look forward to UNEP efforts in strengthening synergies between multilateral environmental agreements and mobilize efforts toward resolving biodiversity issues. Japan will further contribute to the conservation and sustainable use of diversity and the new framework, including through the Satuyama Initiative. As the world faces numerous crises, we recognize the fundamental role UNEP plays in protecting the environment, and we look forward to future opportunity to collaborate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. Jamaica, the floor is yours.
And all colleagues of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, it's my pleasure to address this leadership dialogue session of the 5th meeting of the UNEA. Our collective challenge, which is this pandemic, has presented our collective opportunity, the renewed urgency towards sustainable practices. But this opportunity is only potential, awaiting the strength of our voices and the impact of our action. We, the elected or selected, must now raise up all stakeholders in our respective jurisdictions to send a clear message that the business as usual approach is no longer acceptable. If we are to collectively survive and thrive, particularly in this COVID-19 pandemic, we must take the opportunity to review, to reevaluate, and possibly to reinvent in charting the more sustainable way forward. In Jamaica, although we are not a significant contributor to the global greenhouse gas budget, we continue to play our part. Currently, the government is in the process of updating our climate change policy arena framework to make sure that it aligns with the Paris Agreement, as well as the developments within the climate arena. It is anticipated that the finalization of our updated climate change policy framework will inform the development of legislation in our country. We have also increased our emissions reduction ambition in our updated nationally determined contributions. And we've also committed since 2019 to plant 3 million trees in over 3 years under a national tree planting initiative as part of our commitment to increase food and water security, to reduce biodiversity loss, and to contribute to the country's effort to adapt to and mitigate against the effects of climate change. In keeping with the goal of the 50% power generation from renewable sources by 2030, the Jamaican government has been encouraging green investments within the energy sector. Also, the country is exploring the development and operation of a green bond market as one vehicle to support climate financing. We are also seeking to address the marine litter and plastic pollution problem we have in Jamaica, and we've joined with several countries around the world in instituting measures to regulate single-use plastics. The government has placed a ban on specific types of single-use plastic products, and that has been implemented in 3 phases, commencing since January 1st, 2019. We are in the process also of completing a green economy investment strategy, a document that will form part of our green recovery plan and complement the national investment policy. These policy prescriptions will inform the investment trajectory for the country going forward. All of these activities, my colleagues, have been undertaken through an integrated and partnership approach, focusing on mainstreaming of the environment and climate change issues into our national development priorities. As I close, let me take the opportunity to reiterate the call made by many small island developing states that development partners look beyond the one-size-fits-all remedies and provide a more tailor-made financial support to small island developing states. In doing so, the international community would have truly then recognized the heterogeneous character of this grouping and responded to that accordingly. As I close, I say financing, climate financing is critical. And financing for sustainable development post-COVID-19 must include the application of a mix of tools and methodologies, debt relief, debt swaps, as well as the introduction of financial instruments such as green and blue bonds. My colleagues, I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Estonia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. As many of you have already highlighted today, this is a moment of crisis which we should use as an opportunity. COVID-19 pandemic has shown that nature appreciates less polluting pressure from us. We Estonians pretty much define ourselves as digital and nature-loving community. Therefore, we are confident that green and digital transition will support the post-pandemic sustainable recovery. The revival of ecosystems for the benefit of people and nature are also in the center of UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. As Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres called for, we need to move fast and forward. I'm proud to say that the European Union is leading the way, and our commitment to reach climate neutrality by 2050 will soon be written into law. By 2050, we aim to achieve climate neutrality as a national target as well. The government of Estonia has set a strategic plan to leave the production of solid fossil fuel-based electricity by 2035 and to phase out oil shale by 2040. We will continue to increase resource efficiency and green solutions in our industry, and will prepare our circular economy action plan by the end of this year. As I already mentioned, we have a very close relationship with nature. Therefore, nature-based solutions, as was also highlighted by the United Kingdom, are one of the key areas for cooperation. Nature-based solutions have a significant potential to deliver benefits for biodiversity, food security, water, resilience, and the well-being of people. This is where we need more political attention and take this discussion forward. Preserving our nature is equally important as digital transition. For increasing the capacity of implementing digital solutions for sustainability, we need more than just correct data. This means that data needs to be globally comparable, accessible, and interoperable. That is why Estonia has recently launched a new cooperation initiative, DEAL, which is a coalition of member states and non-state actors who will support UNEP in developing a global environmental data strategy by 2025. We are so thankful to more than 20 member states who have confirmed their interest, and we are calling upon all of you, member states, private sector, academia, civil society, to join this community. Finally, UNEP has a fundamental role in guiding international environmental governance, and Estonia confirms its dedication, our dedication, to actively contribute to this endeavor. Smart and green digitalization is our gateway. Let us all act for nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Excellency. Croatia, you have the floor.
Croatia, your mic is open.
We have some technical glitches while we are trying to connect Croatia. May I invite Iraq? Iraq, you have the floor.
السيدات والسادة أصحاب المعالي والسعادة المشاركين في حوار القادة، سيدة إنجر أندرسون مدير التنفيذي لبرنامج الأمم المتحدة للبيئة، سيدات والسادة الأفاضل أعضاء الوفود الموقرين، باسم جمهورية العراق نتقدم لكم بأطيب التحايا وأتقدم بالامتنان والشكر للسيدة جويس.
J'aimerais saisir cette occasion pour exprimer toute ma gratitude à Madame Doris Msuya. Le son s'est interrompu.
Unfortunately, the feed has cut, says the interpreter.
في برنامج الأمم المتحدة للبيئة على إدارتهم للحوار. نلتقي اليوم.
Nous voilà donc réunis.
So, here we are,
et c'est bien là une belle occasion, quoique virtuelle, sous l'égide du CNUE, malgré ces circonstances exceptionnelles liées à la pandémie du Covid-19. Cependant, cela ne nous empêchera guère d'être optimistes, de voir un jour notre collaboration s'accentuer pour mieux faire face d'abord à la pandémie et au lendemain aux défis communs auxquels nous faisons face et qui ont été imposés sur les États du monde entier. Malgré ces difficultés, la République d'Irak n'a guère cessé de déployer des efforts à travers les motifs divers pour accentuer la coopération. Et ceci ne peut qu'être dans le bon sens, puisqu'il renforce d'un côté l'économie irakienne, mais aussi permet une meilleure résilience et une meilleure adaptation des capacités nationales, tout en poursuivant le progrès et la poursuite des efforts sur la base des mécanismes existants et en coopération avec le PUE. L'Irak a pu bénéficier d'un grand nombre de contributions à l'échelle nationale ou internationale dans le but de réaliser les objectifs tracés et définis dans le domaine du changement climatique. Nous avons par ailleurs, adopter un grand nombre de lois pour réduire l'émission des gaz à effet de serre et pour renforcer les vulnérabilités, pour mieux faire face aux défis et s'adapter et atténuer les conséquences du réchauffement climatique. L'Irak a ainsi participé pour sa part aux efforts internationaux déployés sur ce plan. L'Irak a accepté d'adhérer à la Convention de Minamata, par exemple, ainsi qu'un grand nombre d'autres conventions telles que la Convention de Bâle. Mesdames et messieurs, malgré les difficultés liées à la pandémie, nous restons convaincus que l'humanité vaincra de nouveau. L'environnement est un domaine qui aura un rôle inépuisable pour nous aider à trouver les solutions durables tout en maintenant la santé des êtres humains. Et je saisis cette occasion pour réaffirmer l'importance du domaine environnemental et écologique pour mieux maintenir la santé et l'hygiène, tout en maintenant également les ressources en eau et les ressources forestières et toutes autres ressources naturelles. Les solutions doivent donc s'inspirer de la nature sur le plan régional et international, car ceci augmentera nos chances de succès et nous permettra certes de trouver des solutions rapides et durables, et nous permettra également de mieux surmonter les conséquences de la pandémie.
Nous appelons la communauté internationale à mieux faire face aux défis actuels à travers la coopération. Nous sommes tous conscients que tous ces éléments sont entreliés, qu'ils soient environnementaux, climatiques ou de santé. C'est ainsi qu'il nous incombe tous d'adopter des lois et des plans qui seront multisectoriels, des plans dans le domaine environnemental qui s'inspirent de la solidarité sociale, du développement durable, du soutien en faveur de la jeunesse et de reconnaître la nécessité d'avoir un développement équitable et équilibré. Et c'est bien là le secret qui nous permettra de faire face à tous les défis et de réduire les tensions, qu'elles soient régionales ou internationales. Nous espérons que ces tendances seront en priorité pour le PNUE, que ce soit à travers le renforcement et la promotion du Fonds de développement vert ou à travers d'autres moyens. L'orateur, le son de l'orateur n'est pas fluide. Remarque de l'interprète. Nous espérons donc que la coopération se poursuivra pour créer une économie verte et durable. J'aimerais conclure en vous remerciant et en vous saluant.
Fix their problems. I would like to invite Excellency Ambassador Viranda Paul, India, for your intervention, followed by Excellency Aziz Rabah, Morocco, and Excellency Georgios Amiras, Greece, Excellency Jamil Mtur, State of Palestine, and Excellency Maksud Dovs, Uzbekistan. India, you have the floor.
Delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me thank the President and the Bureau for organizing the 5th session of the UN Environment Assembly. India also places its appreciation to the decision of the two-step approach to the Assembly, this virtual meeting, and a physical one in February 2022. I would like to congratulate the open-ended CPR under the chair of our able colleague Ambassador Fernando Coimbra of Brazil for successfully concluding the challenging process of online negotiations. I would also like to thank the organizers of this leadership dialogue, a platform for sharing our views, which we are sure will generate a momentum towards a resilient and environment-friendly post-pandemic world. The year 2021 is a momentous year. It marks the start of the UN Decade for Action for accelerating efforts to find solutions to the world's most pressing problems and facilitate the attainment of SDGs. This year also marks a turning point as the world gradually emerges from the ravages of the pandemic. India stands in solidarity with the world to support quick recovery of our societies and economies and bring relief to the impacted populations. We are putting our enormous vaccine manufacturing capacity to support other developing countries so that no one is left behind. For India, the immediate priorities in the aftermath of the pandemic are to allocate resources towards poverty alleviation, job creation, strengthening public health services, and building strong and resilient infrastructure. The world must focus on the most vulnerable and ensure that no one is left behind. We need to build strong and resilient societies to absorb such external shocks in the future, so that there is no further hindrance to the achievement of Agenda 2030. India is mindful of its responsibilities towards environment sustainability and combating climate change. We have embedded environment and climate concerns in our development policies. Our successes have been significant. India has successfully achieved its pre-2020 voluntary goal to cut greenhouse gases emissions. And it is well on track to not only meet its Paris commitments, but exceed them. Emissions intensity of our GDP has declined by 24% over the 2005 levels between 2005 and 2016. India's climate actions have been rated highly in several independent assessments. Our policies for mitigation and adaptation to climate change cover many sectors of the economy. We are shifting towards deployment of renewables in a big way. Our renewable energy installed capacity stands at 136 gigawatts already. We have taken a further aspirational goal of 450 gigawatts by 2030. We are working on sustainable mobility through deploying alternative fuels, an ambitious policy for electric vehicles, stringent fuel emission standards, and expansion of public transportation networks, including metro rail. We are building sustainable habitats and have developed a national cooling action plan for ensuring thermal comfort. A national adaptation fund for climate change has also been set up for funding adaptation projects in diverse climate vulnerable sectors such as agriculture and water. We are successfully expanding our area under forests and conserving our wildlife and biodiversity. The International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI, are India's global initiatives for supporting a clean energy transition and for building disaster resilient infrastructure. Going forward, India is launching a national mission on hydrogen with domestic budgetary support and also scaling up domestic manufacturing of solar cells and capital infusion in the renewable energy sector. These reflect that the agenda of sustainable development, we may call it green recovery, is well entrenched in our domestic policies. A shift towards sustainable lifestyles and steering the globe along a sustainable consumption pathway is the need of the hour. As the world races to develop low carbon technologies to combat climate change, let us ensure that such technologies support sustainable consumption and lifestyles. At the fourth session of the UNEA, India and like-minded countries had piloted a resolution on addressing single-use plastic products pollution. The adoption of this resolution was a significant step. Responding to the resolution, UNEP has brought out a report on addressing single-use plastic products pollution for the consideration of the Assembly. To renew the focus on this issue, India co-hosted a side event along with European Union and UNEP on the 19th of this month on the sidelines of the Assembly. In line with the clarion call of the Honorable Prime Minister of India, the Government of India remains committed to phase out identified single-use plastic items and work towards addressing the problem of single-use plastic product pollution. Together, we can ensure that the UN Decade of Action delivers results, particularly in the environmental dimensions of the Sustainable Development Goals. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Morocco, you have the floor.
شكرا. اسمحوا لي في البداية أن أعبر باسم المملكة المغربية التدابير المتخذة لتنظيم هذا الاجتماع المتحدة للبيئة والاختيار الصائب لموضوع النقاش رفيع المستوى. كما تعلمون فقد عبر المغرب دائما عن التزامه الكبير في مجال البيئة والتنمية المستدامة، ذلك من خلال توقيعه على جل الاتفاقيات كل الاتفاقيات المتعددة الأطراف حول البيئة، وعزمه الجاد على إدراج مقتضياتها في مختلف سياساته وبرامجه التنموية. إن هذا الالتزام السياسي الذي يتجسد على أعلى مستوى تحت القيادة الحكيمة لصاحب الجلالة الملك محمد السادس نصره الله ترسخ من خلال
and His Majesty Mohamed VI
للتنمية المستدامة في
has
يونيو
initiated a
2017
strategy
والتي تشكل
for
إطارا
sustainable
مرجعيا لكل
development.
البرامج
He did this in
القطاعية
June of 2016
وذلك بهدف تحقيق
as a
الانتقال نحو
framework
الاقتصاد الأخضر الدامج في
for
أفق
sectoral
2030.
development.
ويتم حاليا
The aim
إجراء
being
هذه
to
الاستراتيجية من
transition
خلال
Morocco
تنفيذ
to a green and inclusive
28
economy by
مخططا
2030
قطاعيا
in order
للتنمية
to
المستدامة
accelerate the
بالإضافة إلى مخطط
effective
أفقي حول
implementation of
مثالية
the strategy
الإدارة
and to ensure that it is fully
يقوم
in
على
keeping
تحفيز
with the
الإدارة
2030
العمومية على
Sustainable
إعطاء
Development Agenda.
القدوة
The Sustainable
والالتزام
Development
بمبادئ
Governance
التنمية
Framework
المستدامة.
was strengthened by
أما
the
على
establishment
مستوى
of a
الترابي
national
فقد تم
Commission for
التوقيع على
Sustainable
اتفاقية
Development by
للشراكة
decree,
مع مختلف جهات المملكة
and this commission
بهدف تنزيل
is to be
أهداف
chaired
الاستراتيجية
by
الوطني
the head
للتنمية
of government.
المستدامة في المخططات الجهوية للتنمية.
Our objective
وقد
is, of course,
تمكنت بلادنا من
to
خلال وضع
achieve the
وإنجاز هذه
SDGs.
المخططات من تحقيق تقدم ملحوظ في مجال
Thanks to the
دمج
implementation of
الاستدامة
this
في القطاع
strategy,
الأساسي للتنمية.
we've made
وفي
substantial
هذا الإطار
headway incorporating the main
وبالنظر
sectors
للدور
in
الكبير الذي
sustainable
يلعبه قطاع
development
الطاقة
processes.
لتحقيق أهداف الاستدامة تبنى
The
المغرب
energy sector
استراتيجية
is to play
طاقية
a
وطنية تهدف إلى
specifically
تدمين
important
الموارد
role
الطاقية
in
المتجددة
achieving the
وتعزيز
SDGs.
النجاع الطاقي
We, in
والاندماج
fact,
الجهوي
have a
وتحقق
strategy,
منها الكثير
the aim
مما
of which
جعل
is
بلادنا
to improve
وجهة
energy
للاستثمار
efficiency.
والشراكات ومقدرة على
We've
المستوى
managed
الدولي.
to achieve a great deal
وأخذا
already,
بعين الاعتبار
and
توجه
thus
بلادنا إلى
we've managed to
تبني
attract
نموذج
a great
تنموي
deal of
جديد.
foreign investment.
وأيضا تداعيات جائحة كورونا
Furthermore, we've adopted
سيعرف
a
العقد
new
الجديد
development framework so as to tackle
2021-2030 دينامية
the
جديدة
COVID-19 pandemic.
لتطوير الاقتصاد الأخضر
This is
وإطلاق
to
برامج
cover
نوعية في قطاعات
the period
البيئة
out to
والطاقة
2030.
المتجددة والصناعة
Our
والماء
objective is
والفلاحة
to beef up the
والتكنولوجيا
green
الحديثة
economy,
والقطاعات الاجتماعية كالصحة والتعليم والتشغيل والحماية
in addition
الاجتماعية والسكن
to promoting
المستدام
agriculture,
وأيضا
education,
من مجال التنمية
social
المجالية
protection, and
وخاصة
sustainable
القروية
housing,
منها.
not to mention
وستتم
rural
مواكبة
development.
ذلك بمجموعة من الإصلاحات التشريعية والإدارية لتشجيع
A
الاستثمار
whole host
واستعمال
of
الطاقات
legislative
النظيفة
and
وتعميمها
administrative reforms have
بالإضافة إلى
also
تشجيع البحث
taken place,
والابتكار
promoting
وخاصة في مجال
clean
البنايات
energy
الخضراء
and
والنجاعة
incentivizing
الطاقية والشبكة الذكية والهيدروجين
research
وغير
in
ذلك.
this field.
وقد تمكنا
For
بفضل
instance,
هذه السياسة من رفع سقف
in
طموحاتنا في مجال تقليص
spheres like
انبعاثات الغازات
hydropower.
الدفيئة. في
Thanks
إطار
to
اتفاق
these
باريس من
policies,
خلال تحديد
we've set
هدف جديد
more ambitious
في المساهمة
targets
المحددة
for our
وطنيا
greenhouse gas
يقدر
reductions.
44% في أفق 2030. كما قمنا بإعطاء الانطلاق لإنجاز
Revising our nationally
استراتيجية
determined
تنموية
contributions.
منخفضة
We've
الانبعاثات في
also
أفق 2050
given the green light
والتي سيتم تقديمها خلال الدورة
for a
26 من
greenhouse gas
مؤتمر المناخ.
reduction strategy.
واسمحوا لي في
And in fact,
النهاية
this is something we're going to be submitting
أن
to
أؤكد
the
لكم
COP26.
استعداد بلادنا الدائم للتعاون
If I
والشراكة
may,
من أجل عالم
by way of
أخضر
conclusion,
وتنمية
I wish to assure you
مستدامة
that
وعادلة
you can count on my country
وخاصة
to take part in partnerships and
في إفريقيا.
collaboration so that we can
وندعو
build
الدول
a
الكبرى
greener
الأكثر تلويثا
world,
أن تتحمل
and
مسؤوليتها
also
كاملة
to work in
لحماية
favor of
البيئة
Africa.
والإنسان.
We call on
شكرا على
major
إنصاتكم.
polluters to work to protect people and planet. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Excellency. The Assembly appreciates your statement. Now I have the pleasure to call upon Greece. Greece, you have the floor.
Dear colleagues, distinguished delegates, it's a great honor and privilege indeed to participate at the first segment of the United Nations Environmental Assembly 5, which is actually the first global meeting for the environment after the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. Apart from its harsh toll on human lives and economies, the pandemic unfortunately adds up on climate crisis, ecosystem degradation, and pollution increase. To maintain Earth's life support systems while meeting human needs, current and future citizens must be prepared to make sound decisions about the environment at all levels, from local to global. These decisions range from simple everyday lifestyle choices to major decisions about environmental management, development, restoration, and regulation. So we could follow the bottom-up approach to pave the integration path and integrate all the citizens and the crucial stakeholders of all countries in European Union and around the world in our vision and mission of sustainable development and way of living. To make these decisions, people must be equipped with the tools of environmental citizenship, the environmental literacy. Bill Gates, in his last How to Avoid the Climate Disaster, points out two crucial numbers, 51 and 0. We have to get rid of 51 billion of tons of greenhouse gases and achieve zero emissions by 2050. Greece, as a country member of the European Union, GREETS, the Circular Economy Global Alliance, has just been launched by the European Union, the United Nations Environmental Programme, and the UN Industrial Development Organization. The Greek government is already building an ambitious green agenda with carbon neutrality and reduced impacts on Greek nature at its heart. To contribute to the goals of the European Green Deal and the Paris Agreement, we endorsed and work on the national goal of 56% emissions reduction by 2030, comparing to 2005 levels. The investments for a green transition in our National Recovery and Resilience Plan focus on green energy use, biodiversity and forest protection, by a wide reforestation plan all over the country, circular and green economy applications in everyday life, social integration, adaptation, and resilience against future dangers that might occur. So, Your Excellencies, the UN can play an important role in this effort. The UN Environmental Assembly could guide a consensus building among all the stakeholders being involved to build a stronger political momentum towards a worldwide sustainable development. Thank you so much.
Thank you, distinguished minister. Your statement is highly appreciated. Now I wish to call upon the State of Palestine to make its contribution to the leadership dialogue. Excellency, you have the floor. Welcome, please proceed.
صباح الخير للجميع. ما هم بيسمعونا هيك؟ أسعد الله صباحكم وبنرحب فيكم باسم دولة فلسطين عبر هاي التقنية.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Palestine, we wish to extend our greetings to you. We hope that we will be able to use this platform and bring this highly important UNEP Assembly to a successful conclusion. I say that we are adopting very fruitful conclusions which will serve to benefit all countries. Excellencies, President of UNEP, Ministers of the Environment, UNEP Executive Director, Ms. Andersen, Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to address this august assembly. At the outset, I should like to extend the greetings of His Excellency, the President of the State of Palestine, as well as our Prime Minister. They wish you a very successful meeting, which we hope will contribute to achieving global health in the wake of the COVID pandemic, which has impacted all countries and hit poor, fragile countries the hardest. On this note, I wish to thank the organizers of this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID pandemic has hit Palestine hard. We've gone through some very trying circumstances. The systemic destruction of the Palestinian environment is something we're grappling with, in addition to the building of illegitimate colonies, military camps, the destruction of housing, trees are being uprooted, natural resources are being diverted. Furthermore, it is difficult for people to circulate. Recently, there was an attack in a key Palestinian area. Furthermore, we've seen an uptick by the colonizers targeting Palestinian citizens. Despite the very difficult circumstances we live in, we've managed to tackle the COVID pandemic from day one. And this thanks to the measures and directives adopted by the head of state and the head of government. We declared a state of emergency as soon as the first case was detected back in March of last year. We then had a lockdown throughout the Palestinian state in order to stop the spread of this pandemic. We adopted various other measures so as to buttress public health. These go hand in hand and are fully in keeping with World Health Organization requirements. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout the pandemic, the State of Palestine held visual awareness raising campaigns, including in the media, so as to demonstrate how best to tackle the pandemic. We did this using radio and television. Furthermore, we set up centers in various cities tasked with treating patients. We also set up a quarantine facility in Jericho. That facility was for citizens in the city. Moreover, we set up a cooperation mechanism incorporating these various centers in order to ensure that waste management was well managed. In each governorate, we have hospitals hard at work. We've taken note of the requests and the needs voiced by each governorate. These include medical waste disposal requests. Thus, as I was saying, we've run an awareness-raising campaign targeting municipal councils. What's more is we've strengthened environmental controls, regulating social interaction. We've also focused on treatment of wastewater. We have been checking that everyone is wearing masks. In addition to a campaign we've begun to step up protection of natural reserves. All of these measures were taken to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. We've stepped up our cooperation with partners, establishing specialized committees, specifically the Emergency Situations Committee, which is tasked with monitoring treatment of wastewater, which could be a conduit for the spread of the pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, today's meeting aims to help achieve the SDGs by taking concerted action to protect our natural environment. Israel has made the most of the situation to attack the environment by building new housing and spilling wastewater on Palestinian soil in violation of passage laws. Israel has played no small part in scuppering our efforts to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. They've done this by preventing Palestinian workers from going to work. The occupation government is also behind in terms of its pandemic fighting measures. In order to ensure sustainability and reduce the environmental impact of all of this, we've revised our cross-cutting sector-based strategies in the environmental sphere. This strategy covers the period 2021-2023. We also have a medical waste management strategy Furthermore, we've made a submission to the Green Environment Fund, hoping to take measures to reduce the environmental impact of our measures to tackle the pandemic. We hope to engage in technology transfer to collaborate with stakeholders. Currently, we're crafting a strategy focused on biodiversity. The aim being to set up a biosecurity system. The State of Palestine has submitted a request to UNEP calling for an impact assessment to see how the pandemic has influenced health and the environment. Given that the pandemic continues apace throughout the world, it's having a very serious impact, many measures being taken. In light of all of this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling on you to redirect financial resources so as to strike a better balance, funneling these resources to the hardest hit countries so that they can take steps to build capacity. As well as to reduce the pressures exerted on those countries. By way of conclusion, I call on all participants to stand in solidarity. We hope that all countries will have access to the vaccine, that further research can take place on this topic so that we can better tackle various disasters. I call on countries to increase their support to developing countries, especially countries where conflicts are raging, so that we can better protect the natural environment and their societies. I wish to thank the organizers of this meeting and wish you every success. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Excellency. I would like now to invite Uzbekistan, followed by Croatia. Uzbekistan, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to address this UN Environment Assembly. The current difficult reality resulting from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has clearly demonstrated the interconnectedness and interdependence of all states and peoples of the world, the importance of maintaining regular dialogue, building trust, and enhancing cooperation for socioeconomic recovery and sustainable post-crisis development for the benefit of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Countries now urgently need to address a number of pressing issues, especially those aimed at improving people's well-being, building a sustainable and inclusive post-pandemic world, requires developing and implementing green solutions that can balance the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. I am sure many of you are aware of the devastating consequences of the drying up of the Aral Sea, once the fourth largest lake in the world. According to experts, salt and dust storms from the Aral Sea have increased the content of solid particles in the Earth's atmosphere by over 5%, which has had a negative impact on global climate change. The Aral Sea area has become the epicenter of a global environmental disaster. In order to improve the current environmental situation in the Aral Sea region, the government of Uzbekistan is carrying out large-scale work to create forest landscapes on an area of over 2 million hectares. Upon the initiative of the head of states, in 2018, the UN Multi-Partner Trust Fund for Human Security for the Aral Sea region was established. The fund is developing into a reliable platform for the international community to provide practical assistance to the region's population living in extremely difficult environmental conditions. We call upon UNEP member states to contribute to the trust fund. At the 75th session of the UN General Assembly, the President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, initiated the adoption of a special assembly resolution declaring the Aral Sea region a zone of environmental innovation and technology. We count on our partners' support for this important initiative. The strategy for the transition of Uzbekistan to a green economy by 2030 takes into account the lessons of the Aral Sea disaster and aims to join efforts to create conditions for attracting green investments in the development and implementation of the principles of a green economy, both in the Aral Sea region and across the country. In 2018, Uzbekistan ratified the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, which lent additional impetus to the country's efforts to combat climate change. As is well known, Central Asian states, including Uzbekistan, are among the countries most vulnerable in the face of the negative effects of global warming. Ladies and gentlemen, I should like to seize this opportunity to briefly inform you about some of the national regulatory documents that are currently under preparation and the important upcoming events. First of all, there is the Environmental Code. It provides for the integration of environmental protection into all sectoral development strategies. We are working on a draft poverty reduction strategy paper for Uzbekistan, which includes a separate section on environmental and climate change aspects. In March 2021, the government of Uzbekistan will convene a post-pandemic green recovery and development forum, during which we expect to discuss the government strategy for building a better future. We invite our partners to actively participate in the forum. Dear friends, by way of conclusion, I would like to highlight Uzbekistan's strong commitment to further expanding and deepening cooperation with the United Nations, a universal international organization with a central coordinating role in consolidating efforts in post-pandemic recovery. We also stand ready to continue to make our contributions to the development of interaction and dialogue on environmental issues with UNEP and its participating states. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Croatia, you have the floor.
Okay. Sorry for the previous technical inconvenience. Ms. Msuya, Excellencies, dear ministers, representatives of major groups and stakeholders, and in particular children and youth. It is a privilege to represent Croatia in this dialogue. The theme, how the environmental dimension of sustainable development can contribute to building a resilient world, has been at the forefront of everyone's mind for more than a year now. The COVID-19 outbreak has left a significant, permanent mark on our lives and the world on all its sectors and levels. It confirmed the direct impact of climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental pollution of the economy, human health, and society as a whole. It has also reinforced the relevance of One Health approach, recognizing that the health and well-being of humans, animals, and the environment are closely linked. It is evident that joint international efforts in tackling antimicrobial resistance, as well as prevention and containment of outbreak of zoonotic diseases, are crucial. We have to make every effort to combat not only this pandemic, but other alarming issues, as well as such as plastic pollution, climate change, and loss of biodiversity and habitat. That is why it is important to set the right course for recovery based on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its goals, as well as the Paris Climate Agreement. UNEP in UNEP play a crucial role in many areas that are relevant to the success of a sustainable and green recovery, including addressing the root causes of zoonotic diseases, such as the destruction and fragmentation of natural habitats. I would like to highlight our support for UNEP's medium-term strategy 2022 to 2025 and its program of work and budget 2022 to 2023, stressing at the same time the importance of securing stable funding for policy priorities. As we enter the decade of action of the SDGs, UNEP and UNEA have the opportunity and the task to take part in the shaping of a sustainable future for all. If we want to stay the course firmly at the center of our political and economic decision-making. As for Croatia, in line with the European Green Deal, we recently adopted the 2030 National Development Strategy to support a green and sustainable economy based on the concept of circular economy and climate neutrality. Given Croatia's exposure to climate change risk, we will focus our public policies on preserving natural capital, on strengthening low carbon growth, and effective resource management. Being rich in biodiversity, with more than 36% of our territory covered by protected areas, Croatia gives great importance to conservation and restoration of degraded ecosystems and their essential role in reaching climate goals. Supporting the achievement of the ambitious objectives under the EU Biodiversity Strategy, we recently proclaimed one more protected area, the Daina Natural Park. In this regard, we will strongly advocate the adoption of ambitious and transformative post-2020 global biodiversity framework within CBD. Although harmonization of economic activities and infrastructural integration with SDGs may be very challenging, I'm certain that together, through decisive action, we can develop solutions to combat this crisis and build back greener and better. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we are running 30 minutes behind schedule. I would urge the next set of speakers to please keep in mind the 3 minutes time limit. I now have the pleasure to open the floor for the following ministers and representative of civil society. Excellency Abdou Karim Sall, Senegal. Excellency Jelena Tanaskovic, Serbia. Excellency Prem Bahadur Ali, Nepal. Excellency Oswaldo Barbera, Venezuela, and Ms. Sun Lili, Civil Society Representative, China. Senegal, you have the floor.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you.
Excellence. His Excellency, the Minister of Climate and the Environment from the Kingdom of Norway, President of the 5th United Nations Environment Assembly, the President of the 5th United Nations Environment Assembly, Ms. Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Ministers of Environment, His Excellency Ambassador, Chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen, representatives from regional and sub-regional international organizations, ladies and gentlemen, representatives from civil society, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. It is my honor to take the floor this morning in my capacity as Minister of the Environment for Sustainable Development for the Republic of Senegal at this 5th United Nations Environment Assembly. President, Executive Director, at the outset, I would like to convey my gratitude to you and congratulate you for the excellent organization of this virtual format. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all those who have worked tirelessly to produce these documents, which we will review for adoption. And I'd also like to extend my gratitude to UNEP and the Secretariat. Moreover, allow me to convey my gratitude to members of the Bureau of the Committee of the Permanent Representatives under the leadership of His Excellency Ambassador Fernando Coimbra for the excellent preparatory work for this session of UNEA. President, this year has been struck by a health crisis, which has led to unprecedented social and economic consequences. In addition to this health crisis caused by this pandemic, we have also seen an economic crisis and deep social crisis whose devastating effects will risk affecting and exacerbating future generations. In addition to these environmental, social, and economic impacts, this pandemic has really upended the majority of our projections and development programs. The environment, which is our area of concern, has not been spared. And that is why I would really wholeheartedly welcome the relevance of the theme, Strengthening Actions for Nature to Achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which is guiding our session. Undoubtedly, our goal is to foster strengthened environmental action to protect and restore our environment, but also to contribute to build back better, to foster resilience for future crises and to commit our planet on a sustainable path. I should also like to welcome the relevance of all those issues enshrined in our work. They contribute to strengthening the implementation of the environmental protection programs and fostering sustainable development in accordance with international agreements which we are aimed to achieve by 2030. I would like to name inter alia the Paris Agreement on Climate and Development Programme for 2030. It is now a moment to convey my congratulations to UNEP for the preparatory work linked to the preparation for the session. Senegal has pledged to participate actively in the different international and regional consultations in this regard. President, Executive Director, Ministers, distinguished participants. As most countries, Senegal has been shaken to its core by this pandemic, which has led our government, under the insight of His Excellency President Macky Sall, to take appropriate measures to tackle this pandemic. Some of these programs I would like to mention now. The Social and Economic Resilience Program to strengthen the health system and to support households, the diaspora, businesses and their employees, to assist those businesses that have been affected in order to develop their resilience. The National Economic Recovery Programme, which is implemented following the national economic recovery through the support through investment and consumption. Now, the implementation of important greening programs in order to strengthen the protection of the environment, such as the emerging Greener Senegal, which is considered as the environmental pillar of the emerging Senegal Plan, and the Senegal social economic policy between now and 2035. Furthermore, the far-reaching strategic program for the environmental sector between 2019 and 2030, the setting up of a new Great Green Wall Reforestation Agency to foster an ambitious program for the greening of Senegal, the implementation of important urban forestry project on the site of the former airport of Dakar Yoff in order to reintroduce natural parks, which are the real green lungs of our cities, and the zero waste and zero slums programs, just to name but a few. With the zero waste program, Senegal has just adopted a law pertaining to the prevention and the reduction of environmental impacts of plastic products, which is going to protect our environment from plastic waste. I'd also like to mention that the response from my country, whilst addressing the pandemic, is in close alignment with the decisions which will be submitted for our approval at this UNEP 5. President, ministers, the pandemic, such as the climate oscillations which we are currently seeing, has shown us, if we needed to be reminded, the limits of our capabilities to respond to global changes which affect our planet and for which we must shoulder our responsibilities. These different changes must be seen, in my view, as an opportunity for a paradigm shift in how we relate to nature and our development models, which must dovetail with our sustainable consumption and production models, whilst being mindful of our ecosystems. Through this lens, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate UNEP for its medium-term strategy for 2022-2025 and the draft programme of work and the biennial budget of 2022-2023, as well as the African Ministerial Environmental Conference for the critical programme of regreening Africa, which was adapted at its 8th extraordinary session held in December 2020. Senegal welcomes these strategies and programmes and invites UNEP to wholeheartedly support their implementation and the regreening programme for Africa in particular. President, Executive Director, before closing, I would like to underscore Senegal's pledge in the African scope to the resolutions and decisions which will be addressed at this UNEP 5. As in the past, Senegal reconfirms its commitment to UNEP and to all governing bodies who are working in the area of environmental governance to foster sustainable development. And these are the very thresholds and the foundations to build the future that we would like to see for succeeding generations. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. I would now like to welcome Serbia.
Dear Madam Chair, honorable ministers, distinguished participants, please allow me to take this opportunity to address you and convey to you the warmest greetings on behalf of the Ministry of Environmental Protection of the Republic of Serbia, Ms. Irena Vujović. Healthy and resilient ecosystems are essential for human health and survival, the Republic of Serbia fully supports the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly. Our country actively participates in the work of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework within the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. Also, last year, the Republic of Serbia became the member of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. The Republic of Serbia exerts all efforts to make the field of protection and preservation of wild species and their habitats one of the priorities of the national nature protection policy. The climate change affects water resources, agriculture, forestry, including biodiversity and health, and its adverse effects should not be ignored anymore, most certainly bearing in mind negative effect on the energy, infrastructure, transport, and economy on the whole. This is why on our path to a greener future, we have to be to be persistent with the application of both climate change adaptation and mitigation measures, as well as of nature-based solutions on innovative urban planning. Innovations, green growth, and sustainable policies are the vision which the Republic of Serbia wishes to bring to this year's UN Environment Assembly session. Unfortunately, COVID-19 pandemic is impacting social aspects of our society, causing mounting of job losses during the last year. The government of the Republic of Serbia, through adopted packages of measures, helped its citizens and economy to overcome these challenges. I would also like to stress that our country has taken prevention measures and actions for timely vaccination of the population in the most serious manner, confirmed by the fact that the Republic of Serbia is still holding second place in Europe according to vaccination rate per 1 million population and country's vaccination rate per 100 population. In these difficult times, good cooperation and mutual solidarity are more needed than ever, which was recently shown in practice by donating to Montenegro and North Macedonia a certain contingent of vaccines. I assure you that the Republic of Serbia will continue to provide vigorous support in determining further priorities in the environmental and nature protection policies at the global and local levels. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Nepal, you have the floor.
Participate and share few words at this virtual event. Allow me to extend my sincere gratitude to all of you for joining this important event. I admire the efforts of the United Nations Environment Programme for bringing together member states and stakeholders in protecting environment toward building a resilient and exclusive post-pandemic world. I believe the theme for the fifth session of United Nations Environment Assembly, entitled Strengthening Actions for Nature to Achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, is very much relevant and timely to address the environmental concern globally. Mr. Chairman, the impact of COVID-19 pandemic have hardly hit the most poor and vulnerable people, particularly those who rely their livelihood on sectors such as agriculture and nature resources. It reminds us that we are living in an interconnected global community with a common goal of saving people and planet. The developed and developing countries are struggling to redirect resources to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. This may detrimentally impact the capacity of the international community to address the noted shortfall in investment towards environmental sustainability. These days, the whole world is now engaging toward the recovery and rehabilitation phase. Ideally, that focus on green growth to drive transformational change which support sustainable development aspirations. Let me share some of the initiatives undertaken by the government of Nepal on environment governance and management. We have aligned our policy instrument aids for the spirit of sustainable development. The government of Nepal has formulated Nation Environment Policy 2019, Environment Protection Act 2019, and Regulation 2020, Forest Act 2019. We have submitted the enhanced nationality determined contribution of UNFCCC in December last year with net zero emission in 2050. We are also implementing projects and programs related to environment protection and management to promote green growth and green recovery. We prioritize producing clean and renewable energy, promoting e-mobility, low carbon infrastructure, and ecotourism. Environmental problem is essentially a development problem whose solution requires synergy of international collaboration rather than isolated efforts from national governments. We seek hands of all countries to march ahead for a greener journey together. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Excellency. Venezuela, you have the floor.
On behalf of the President Nicolas Maduro, I'd like to welcome all of you, and I'm very happy to be here with you. Despite the negative effects of the unilateral coercive measures and the economic and the embargo and sanctions and the blockade, which do affect very drastically the full enjoyment of human rights of our peoples and a strategy of our environmental policy for sustainable development, we have decided to set up a fund for eco-socialism, for sustainable development protection towards the adaptation, mitigations and improvement of environmental conditions at the local and national level in order to meet the following targets. Firstly, to strengthen the sovereignty of the Venezuelan state, the management of our national system of national protected areas, two biospheres and 36 natural parks, 7 flora and fauna special areas, which palliate about 29% of the national territory, and 63 protected areas which are protected by the environment. In this area, in accordance with 20,000 men and women from our civil forestry guards, about 40% of these to improve the management of these important forestry areas. Secondly, the sustainable management of the forestry areas and primary or secondary forests and strengthening agroforestry areas as a mitigation measure for climate change to strengthen everything at a national level. Last year we planted 10,000 trees, and we hope to increase this year in order to achieve our commitments for 2030. Strengthening the ecological footprint of our companies to the oil and mining industries in order to meet sustainability targets, which is at our very heart, and our economic recovery plans. The strengthening of the integration waste management, we have kick-started to achieve the target, which is the corporate social responsibility of businesses to reduce single-use plastics, access to the International Cooperation Fund at the international level, and to strengthen national strategies for the sustainable management of biodiversity, and to have technologies which are based on reducing the negative impacts on the ecosystem, to improve environmental impacts stemming from bad environmental practices. With our new National Assembly, we are also in alignment to strengthen all legislative in order to meet our international environmental goals and also to meet our eco-socialist goals. Despite the multiple endeavors undertaken, we feel that all countries must work together in order to achieve sustainable development with an environmental dimension. Therefore, we need funding, support, and capacity building. We firmly believe that UNEP is a strategic tool in order to reach multilateralism, which is so important in the post-COVID era. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Ms. Sun Lili, Civil Society Representative, you have the floor.
Thanks for having me. It is my great honor to participate in the leadership dialogue. I would like to use my mother tongue, Chinese, to give my speech. 尊敬的各位同仁，我很高兴代表阿拉善 SEE 生态协会参加对话。
Distinguished colleagues, I'm delighted to participate in this dialogue. SEE is the largest platform for Chinese entrepreneurs in environmental protection. More than 900 business leaders joined the course via voluntary action and philanthropic work. We have supported more than 700 environmental NGOs. Over the past decade, none of the 20 Aichi targets of biodiversity has been fully met, so we have to balance our environmental ambition with reality. First, the outlook of global consumption and production. The prominent two drivers for industry's green transition are market demand and mode of production. The pandemic will have a short-lived impact on the conventional consumer demands. It will take longer period to achieve transformative change in consumption. Technological innovations such as renewable energy and information and communication technology have brought opportunities to the greening of production process. The enhanced supply chain management and the reshuffle of global value chain enabled SEE to set green standards and practice green procurement in China. Once the thousands of upstream suppliers are pushed to improve their environmental performances, the annual green procurement volume has reached $1.5 billion in 2020. And however, individual business impact on environment is limited. Therefore, SEE as a network enterprises provide the new way for the engagement of multiple industries. Now, distinguished delegates, we call on environmental political leaders around the world to seize this opportunity to act in such areas as follows. First, to value ecosystem services and natural capital when formulating economic policies. Second, to strengthen international and domestic rule of law on environment. Three, to promote green finance and impact investment. Four, to build synergies when dealing with multiple environmental issues. And five, to strengthen pollution information disclosure and environmental data, sharing the data. Finally, we hope that the SEE values the fundamental role played by UNEP, and we strongly support UNEP's the Science Policy Business Forum and the Global Environment Outlook. As a member of the major group and stakeholder in Asia-Pacific region, we will continue to support UNEP's work in China and the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sun. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I now invite the following ministers for their interventions: Excellency Nancy Tembo, Malawi; Excellency Mehmet Emin Birpinar, Turkey; Excellency Jeoung-ae Han, Republic of Korea; Excellency Mohamed Kashashneh, Jordan; Excellency Aaron Farugia, Republic of Malta; Excellency Virginijus Sinkevicius, European Union; Excellency Krista Mikkonen, Finland. Malawi, you have the floor. Thank you.
Yes. I can start. Let me first of all thank you and congratulate you, Mr. President, for a well-organized virtual part of UNEP 5. Let me first of all thank you and congratulate you, Mr. President, for a well-organized virtual part of UNEP 5. Given the unprecedented times occasioned by COVID-19, such a gathering is a clear manifestation of our commitment to nature to ensure achievement of SDGs. Let me also congratulate fellow ministers for applauding our decision to approve the medium-term strategy for UNEP, which aims to deal with 3 planetary crises of biodiversity loss: climate change and pollution caused by chemicals and waste, and also approving the program of work and budget for 2021 and 2022. Mr. President, the COVID-19 pandemic is primarily a health crisis, but one which has arisen due to our relation with nature, since a healthy environment leads to a healthy well-being and vice versa. As such, it is our duty as ministers to ensure that mankind actions do not degrade the environment because it supports us. Therefore, first and foremost, as leaders,
we have some technical glitches with Malawi. I would like to propose we go with Turkey
the
while we are
availability
trying
of
to.
finances,
Sorry, Malawi is back.
technology,
Malawi, you have the
and
floor.
technical know-how. 2, at a national level and as a national commitment, provision of meaningful and adequate budgetary allocation for the sector. And finally, further, as part of our national efforts, ensuring technocrats are fully supported and given an environment conducive to exercise their expertise to the fullest capacity in management of the environment. Mr. President, as I'm speaking now, as part of the post-pandemic plans, the government of Malawi, through Ministry of Forestry and Natural Resources, has already introduced a carbon levy as a sustainable funding source for the environmental management in our country. The aim of the levy is to specifically establish a readily available basket towards environmental and climate change management. We have created Malawi Environmental Protection Authority, MEPA, as a principal tool for improving management of the environment. This body will coordinate efforts from various stakeholders as we work towards a green recovery in the post-pandemic world. And we have designated a National Cleanup Day as a means of meeting our constitutional obligations in ensuring a clean and healthy environment for all. While the incidence of COVID-19 may have slowed down efforts in this initiative, it has afforded us the opportunity to consider other aspects of environmental management, including proper management of coronavirus waste and waste for wealth. Mr. President, building a resilient and inclusive post-pandemic world will require international cooperation and actions from multilateral engagements. Therefore, global solidarity is required not just because it is a logical thing to do, but also primarily because environmental challenges do not respect national borders. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished audience. First, I would like to express my gratitude to the Executive Director for her great efforts. The pandemic revealed our lack of immunity to natural threats and the importance of a green transition. I believe this is an opportunity for us to stimulate the efforts towards the achievement of the SDGs through a more resilient and inclusive post-pandemic world. As highlighted in the Making Peace with Nature report launched on the 18th February by UNEP, we must urgently act in collaboration to fight climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution for the present and future generations. To achieve the future we want, we need a new approach to transform the relationship between man and the nature. As earlier, the UNDP, head of the UNDP, Ahim Steiner, already said that the systems cannot change the system, but the man can do it. So we strongly support what he said. This transformation starts at the individual level, and we need the new actors and the actions in this way. The civilization of humankind has the knowledge, technology, and the cooperation instruments to create a sustainable future. To this end, we must respect the nature's capacity in our decisions. So we have to respect the nature itself. So we must be sure that our decisions today will contribute to long-term sustainability of the environment as well as our economies. So we call it sustainable development. I believe that UNEP will continue its pioneer role in putting in place sustainable policies all over the world, as it has done in many environmental governments so far. Distinguished ministers, despite our pandemic, Turkey has never compromised from its efforts towards an environmentally sustainable future. We have determined a new roadmap regarding our climate change policies under the changing national and international circumstances. We held the Climate Change Summit under the auspices of our First Lady, Her Excellency Madam Emine Erdogan, on 17th February 2021. We are also updating the Turkish National Climate Change Strategy for 2050 and the National Climate Change Action Plan for 2030. Turkey will continue to give priority to clean energy sources and technologies along and after the pandemic. By 2030, solar energy share will be increased to 10 gigawatt and wind energy share to 16 gigawatt. Fossil fuel use in buildings will be decreased 25% by 2023. Incentives and subsidies to promote climate and environmental friendly production for clean and industrial facilities will be increased also. We established the Turkish Environmental Agency to put into practice the circular economy framework that we aim in the zero waste approach. Within the scope of the zero waste project that will be disseminated through the country until 2023, the recovery rate of waste will be increased to 60% in 2035. We pursue our work on preventing land-based marine litter at the Black Sea and in the Mediterranean also. Distinguished ministers, I would like to note that we will continue our efforts in accordance of our national circumstances and the capabilities for green post-COVID-19 recovery. I believe the international community as well will act together and cooperate to overcome the planetary crisis. We must create inclusive governance systems, as UNEP always promotes. All actors, whether individually or institutionally, need to be a part of the transformative change we desire. Knowledge-based cooperation and innovation will bring us a sustainable future. I would like to thank UNEP and all the member states for their efforts to create a greener future. I wish to meet you in person on Healthy Days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thanking the Norwegian presidency and UNEP for organizing this unprecedented online session of UNEA 5. We are tasked with overcoming not only health and economic crisis, but also environmental crisis all at the same time. This means that the only way forward is to build back better, greener, and more sustainable. For years, Korea has made dedicated efforts to build a sustainable society and restore our ecosystem. We have expanded designated land and marine protected areas, restore endangered species to increase biodiversity, and tightened the control over potential zoonosis. All these measures have been taken to create a society where nature, wildlife, and human could harmoniously coexist. Korea will share this experience and knowledge to act for nature as the host country of the 4th Asia-Pacific Environmental Ministers Forum this coming October in the lead up to the resumed sessions of UNEA 5 in 2022. Excellencies, Korea declared its 2050 carbon neutrality vision, along with the Green New Deal for a greener recovery. This is a huge challenge for Korea, where economy is still dependent on heavy and chemical industries. However, Korea is willing to take action for present and future generations, and we are currently working on sectoral net zero roadmaps to restructure our economy and our ways of life. As this requires a holistic approach, engaging all stakeholders, I would like to draw your attention to P4G, a global initiative for green growth and sustainable development goals, with its innovative public-private partnerships. As the host country of the second P4G summit in late May, Korea will ensure this P4G summit offers a venue for reaffirming global solidarity toward green and inclusive recovery. Your sincere interest and full participations would be deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Jordan, you have the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيدة أنجر أدنسر مدير برنامج
Of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Thank you to the Executive Director of UNEP. Excellencies, dear colleagues, I wish to welcome all of you, and I'd like to thank the Secretariat for the outstanding preparation of this meeting in these exceptionally difficult circumstances. I would like to inform you that Jordan is currently elaborating a plan for green reconstruction after the pandemic, and we focus on a number of key sectors. The Jordanian government uses all of its means, all the means available to it, to adapt itself to the new conditions imposed by the pandemic. With the global partnership for NDCs at a national level. This to ensure that we link climate action with national economic sustainable development. The efforts displayed to face up to the problem of climate change, as well as the pandemic, means that we have an opportunity available to us to adapt our plans to ensure that we achieve our economic objectives as well as all related objectives in terms of climate change and sustainable development. The COVID pandemic in Jordan has had a social and economic impact which was a negative one. And of course, it has cost the economy a great deal. There's been a decrease of 3.5% of our economy. We expect that over 20% of our population will be unemployed. This is one of the indicators of national development. The pandemic has increased the pressure on our natural resources. Our natural resources are already small ones in Jordan. Water, for example. Jordan is one of the countries which suffers from a lack of water, and we were impacted at this level. However, we still elaborated a plan in terms of NDCs and launched the National Plan for Green Growth, which covers the years 2020 to 2025, and this will enable us to benefit from these efforts to ensure that we direct the reconstruction plans towards these objectives. So Jordan has welcomed 1.8 million refugees from neighboring countries, including Syria. Refugees who are fleeing conflict in these areas. Half of these refugees have been recorded by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. These refugees, and we say this with a great deal of pride, these refugees are entitled to enjoy all the services available to our population. And this, of course, increases pressure on our country. So we need to bolster weak societies. To remedy these impacts, Jordan will continue its work side by side with its partners and friends at an international level, including international organizations, in terms of our NDCs. And we're going to analyze the impact of the pandemic on our macroeconomic planning and back a general macroeconomic framework which takes into account the impact of the pandemic. We're going to assess the pandemic's economic and social impact on climate change and on the objectives in terms of climate change in our kingdom. And when we are going to analyze the impact of the pandemic on the SDGs, as well as environmental reconstruction projects. And we're going to link up the green reconstruction plan with our NDCs, which are going to be relaunched during this year. And we're going to look at opportunities in terms of green employment. We're also going to look at the initiative for climate financing. The Kingdom has set up green plans for 6 key sectors. Energy, tourism, and others. Unfortunately, there was a cut in the audio. But it's important that these interactions give rise to projects which we hope that our partners, international friends, including donors, will help by making contributions to them, and this will help us to achieve our plan and help us to implement the principle of build back better. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Republic of Malta, followed by the EU. Republic of Malta, you have the floor.
Malta, kindly raise your hand. Kindly raise your hand, Malta.
EU, you have the floor while we are sorting out technical glitches with Malta. EU, you have the floor.
irgi visuomet yra niuansai. Tai aš šioje vietoje, manau, pirma, joks sprendimas negali būti priimtas, kuris liečia 27 šalis narės be diskusijų. Ir kaip ir sakiau, šalis narės jos turi ir dažnu atveju tokius pakankamai racionalius, dažniausiai.
European Union, you have the floor.
Jų asmenės, tai jų tiesiog turėtų labai didelė.
We will go with Finland. Finland, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Very
yes.
Clearly. Thank you.
Madam Deputy Executive Director, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to take the floor in this important discussion. In Finland, we consider that rebuilding after the pandemic provides us with a unique possibility to turn our development towards greener and more sustainable path. Therefore, the Finnish government has agreed that at least 50% of recovery funds will be steered to support the green transition. During year 2020, the Finnish government has already implemented 1.5 billion euros worth of sustainable recovery measures. These include, for example, replacing oil heating in buildings, subsidies for renewable energy, and investing in electric vehicle charging stations. Ladies and gentlemen, to avoid pandemics in the future, addressing biodiversity loss and climate change is critically important. We need to promote One Health approach and understand that the health of environment, animals, and humans go hand in hand. We need to transfer our economies towards sustainable path globally. This means rethinking our ways of consumption and production. We need the transition from linear to circular economy. This requires sound management of chemicals and waste, including plastics. We believe that a new global agreement on plastics would be the most efficient solution. UNEP is well positioned to take action. The medium-term strategy and program of work that we approved yesterday highlight sustainable consumption and production as crucial element for ensuring sustainability of our planet and the resilient and inclusive living conditions for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Finland. Now the EU has the floor. You have a floor, EU.
Ministers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning from Brussels. Thank you to the Norwegian presidency for its leadership and to UNEP for the hard work on the preparations under very difficult circumstances. COVID has reminded us of our fragility, but also of our dependence and our impact on nature. The UNEP Making Peace with Nature report brings those messages home.
It shows us that we were on the wrong track, that our mode of development degrades the Earth's capacity to support our well-being. Our assembly this week must show the right track. It must show a world united in action for nature and for the green transition, a world determined to deliver on the SDGs and its ambitious 2030 agenda. Over the next 2 years, we have many opportunities to go down that track and to accelerate action on climate, biodiversity, land, chemicals, and waste, sustainable food, and to launch a global agreement on plastic. With the European Green Deal, the EU is showing that it can be done. Our deal addresses all the main drivers of environmental degradation with policies across the board, from agriculture to energy, from transport and housing. It's a deal with a nature at its heart and climate neutrality as its goal. And it's a track that takes us to a resource-efficient circular economy. Yesterday, together with UNEP and UNIDO and other front-runner countries, we launched a global alliance on circular economy and resource efficiency to boost this transition to a circular economy. We believe in the value of cooperation, and I like to assure you today of the EU's commitment to multilateralism and of our ongoing support for UNEP as the key multilateral institution to set the global environmental agenda. Its work is more relevant than ever, and so I am very happy that a new roadmap for enhanced cooperation has been agreed between UNEP and the European Commission for the next 4 years. This virtual session is only a beginning, but it is a good start. Let's ensure we transform these virtual ideas into real-world action on the ground, setting us all on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Republic of Malta, you have the floor. We are trying to connect Malta. I would like to welcome Excellency Grace Fu, Singapore. Singapore, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies and distinguished delegates, I congratulate the Unified Norwegian Presidency for convening the leadership dialogue through virtual means. While countries are managing the dual challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, of public health and economy, this dialogue draws the attention of global political leadership on environmental challenges, including climate change. Collective action and international cooperation through UNEP are critical to arrest global warming and address the urgent need for climate action. As a small island state with limited resources, Singapore has always pursued sustainable development since independence. And as a low-lying island, global warming is an existential problem for us. Amidst the global pandemic, we see greater need in building our climate, economic, and resource resilience, and to emerge greener, better, and stronger through a whole-of-nation action plan. We recently launched the Singapore Green Plan 2030. The Green Plan will guide us towards our climate action goals, and it has the following 5 pillars. First, city in nature. We will plant 1 million more trees over the next decade and create a green, livable, and sustainable home for Singaporeans. Second, sustainable living. We will reduce the waste sent to our landfill by 30% over the next decade. Through our schools, we will inculcate in our young the values and habits to understand, practice, and live sustainability. Third, energy reset. We will adopt cleaner energy and increase energy efficiency to lower our carbon footprint. By 2030, we will double the targeted number of electric vehicles charging points from 28,000 to 60,000. Our solar energy deployment will also increase to 5 times that of today. Fourth, green economy. We will support our businesses to go green. We will also embrace sustainability as a new engine of growth, of jobs and growth, and grow new industries such as green finance and carbon services. And fifth, a resilient future. We will strengthen Singapore's climate resilience and enhance our food security by dedicating resources to strengthen coastal protection and to produce 30% of nutritional needs by 2030. The Green Plan reinforces our commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals, including our pursuit of circular economy in achieving our vision of a zero-waste nation. I offer my best wishes to Executive Director Andersen ahead of the launch of commemorative activities for UNEP's 50th anniversary. Much has been achieved since its establishment at the Stockholm Conference on Human and Development in 1972. Singapore joins the international community to support UNEP in its work as the world continues to face increasing environmental challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I would like to thank you for your patience to add a few minutes so we can listen to the remainder of the interventions from ministers and stakeholders. I would also like to announce that in about 5 minutes, we will lose the interpretation services. And I want to thank the interpreters and thank all the member states for your understanding in using English for the following interventions. For now, I have the pleasure to open the floor to Excellency Alanur Oltiyev of Turkmenistan, followed by Excellency Mariam Belkaye, Mauritania, Excellency Zakia Katabi, Belgium, Excellency Simon Steele, Grenada, and we will try to connect Malta. Turkmenistan, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Assembly participants, at the outset, we should like to thank all of the organizers and the Secretariat on behalf of the government of Turkmenistan. We're very grateful that you've organized the United Nations Environmental Assembly 5th edition. We wish you every success over the course of your deliberations. Environmental safety and the rational use of natural resources sustainable development form the foundations of Turkmenistan's environmental policy. President of Turkmenistan, Mr. Berdimuhamedow, speaking at the last session of the United Nations General Assembly, highlighted the particular attention Turkmenistan is paying to climate change, environmental protection, sustainable use of natural resources, and environmental protection. As you know, part and parcel of sustainable development is the fight against climate change. This, together with other environmental issues, are uppermost in our minds. Each and every country needs to take efforts, but we also need to band together. The interpreters regret to inform participants that speaker audiovisual quality is not sufficient to continue providing interpretation. Interpretation will resume as soon as better audiovisual quality is available. The interpreters regret to inform participants that speaker audiovisual quality is not sufficient to continue providing interpretation. Interpretation will resume as soon as better audiovisual quality is available.
Несет особую опасность для регионов, подверженных серьезным экологическим рискам. Именно поэтому для решения проблем Арала необходимо развитие системного многогосударственного сотрудничества при активном взаимодействии с авторитетными международными организациями и прежде всего Организацией Объединенных Наций и ее агентствами.
Roberto apologizes yet again, but she cannot hear the speaker properly. My apologies.
Призвано обеспечение комплексный подход к решению проблем арабского кризиса и широким участием всех интересованных сторон. Важной деятельностью в решении вопросов, связанных с борьбой изменения климата и сохранением биологического разнообразия, является реализация задач национальной лесной программы, в рамках которой в стране проводятся ежегодные акции по посадке огромного числа лесных саженцев. Всего за годы независимости в стране было посажено более 115 миллионов саженцев деревьев. В 2021 году, который, как известно, было по инициативе Туркменистана, провозглашен Генеральной Ассамблеей ООН Международным годом мир и доверие. Наша сторона отмечает историческую дату 30-ю годовщину независимости Туркменистана. И в этой связи в этом году по всей стране будут организованы масштабные мероприятия по посадке 30 миллионов саженцев деревьев, что послужит еще одним весомым вкладом нашей страны в улучшение экологической ситуации в регионе Центральной Азии. Завершая свое выступление, хотелось бы отметить, что Туркменистан выступает за принятие согласованных подходов в решении региональных и международных вопросов охраны окружающей среды. Признавая, что консенсус является единственным.
The interpreter apologizes, but she still cannot hear the speaker properly. This is the end of interpretation for this session. Thank you very much.
Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Mauritania, you have the floor.
Mauritania, the mic is open.
Belgium, you have the floor while we are sorting out technical challenges with Mauritania. Belgium.
Chers collègues, mesdames et messieurs, en vos titres et qualités. Alors, nombre de mes prédécesseurs ont évoqué la situation sanitaire que nous traversons depuis bientôt 1 an et son impact sur nos sociétés. Alors, tout en poursuivant nos efforts dans la gestion de celle-ci, tout en faisant notre deuil suite à la perte de tant de vies, il nous revient de préparer l'avenir en tirant les leçons de ce tragique épisode de notre histoire collective. Alors, leçons sanitaires, évidemment, mais sociales, économiques et environnementales également. Nous ne pouvons plus, par exemple, fermer les yeux sur le lien entre santé humaine et état de notre biodiversité. Il s'agit pour nous de préparer l'avenir, de préparer l'après. Nous devons redynamiser nos sociétés, les rendre plus justes, résilientes et inclusives. Et l'agenda 2030 est la boussole qui doit nous guider. Alors concrètement, outre que nous nous inscrivons évidemment dans la stratégie européenne, cela passera pour la Belgique par des investissements massifs dans la durabilité de nos bâtiments, dans les énergies renouvelables ou encore dans la promotion d'une mobilité durable. Nous augmenterons, dans le cadre d'un Blue Deal, les investissements pour rendre notre système de gestion de l'eau plus durable et résilient au climat. Les solutions fondées sur la nature présentent des avantages mutuels, à la fois pour le climat et pour la biodiversité. Nous allons ainsi protéger nos côtes et empêcher les catastrophes naturelles en utilisant la force de la nature. Le verdissement de nos toits dans les villes et les zones industrielles agira comme système naturel de refroidissement et de stockage d'eau. Nous poursuivrons également la transition vers une économie circulaire et soutenons pleinement l'Alliance mondiale pour l'économie circulaire. Faire le choix des produits durables est à mes yeux fondamental. L'initiative du cycle de vie du PNUE contribue à la recherche d'une réponse à la question « Qu'est-ce qu'un produit durable ?» C'est pourquoi mon administration, en collaboration avec les collègues du Québec au Canada, soutient la traduction et la diffusion des lignes directrices pour une analyse du cycle de vie social des produits et des organisations. Nous devons, par exemple, transformer nos systèmes alimentaires. Permettez-moi à cet égard de rappeler l'initiative Beyond Chocolate. Tout au long de la chaîne de valeur, elle vise à mettre fin à la déforestation, au travail des enfants, ainsi qu'à assurer un revenu digne, un revenu juste pour les producteurs locaux de cacao. Dans le même ordre d'idées, la Belgique a récemment rejoint le partenariat de la Déclaration d'Amsterdam pour des matières premières durables sans déforestation. Alors nous le savons, l'impact de nos choix de vie, de nos choix de consommation ou encore de mobilité dépasse nos frontières respectives. Le multilatéralisme est dès lors essentiel. Ce n'est qu'ensemble que nous trouverons les meilleures solutions pour tous. C'est pourquoi nous apprécions particulièrement le rôle de cette Assemblée et le rôle du PNUE en tant que catalyseur pour relever les défis environnementaux mondiaux. Nos actions doivent être étayées par la science. Et le programme CBIOS permet à nos scientifiques de se joindre à des scientifiques du Sud pour améliorer leurs connaissances sur la biodiversité et les écosystèmes, le rôle à nouveau que joue le PNUE pour intégrer la science dans la prise de décision est à nos yeux fondamental. Alors, les vecteurs du changement climatique, de la perte de biodiversité et de la pandémie doivent être combattus conjointement. En ce sens, le PNUE nous permet de mieux comprendre l'interaction entre la dégradation des écosystèmes, les changements climatiques et la menace qu'ils représentent pour la santé humaine. Nous devons intégrer ce lien et penser une gestion globale des écosystèmes et des espèces. Alors, permettez-moi de terminer en nous invitant à unir nos forces à l'occasion des 3 futures COP de Rio pour agir de manière ambitieuse en faveur du climat, pour lutter contre la désertification et pour rehausser l'ambition d'un cadre mondial pour la biodiversité post-2020. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Belgium. Grenada, you have the floor.
On me voyait ou pas?
Grenada, your mic is open.
I would like to invite Excellency Ambassador Franz Perez, Switzerland, to take the floor. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Switzerland, your mic is open. You're streaming.
Apologies for technical difficulties. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I would like to invite Excellency Abdullah Abdulaziz Turki Al Subaiya of Qatar, followed by Excellency Ale Piquemal of Monaco, Excellency Iang Sophalet, Cambodia, Excellency Konstantinos Kadis, Cyprus, and we will try to get Switzerland, Grenada, and Mauritania online. Qatar, you have the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيد الرئيس، أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسرني في البداية أن أتوجه بالتهنئة إلى سعادة وزير المناخ والبيئة النرويجي على توليه المهام رئاسة الدورة الخامسة للأمم المتحدة للبيئة، متمنين له التوفيق والنجاح في مهام الموكلة إليه. كما أعرب عن عميق تقديري لسعادة وزير البيئة لجمهورية ليثوانيا لما بذله من جهود قيمة في إدارة أعمال الدورة الرابعة. وأغتنم هذه المناسبة لأشيد بالجهود التي يبذلها المدير التنفيذي لبرنامج الأمم المتحدة للبيئة والمكتب في مواجهة التحديات الجسيمة التي يواجهها عالمنا وفي رفع أداء الكفاءة وعمل البرنامج. الحضور الكرام، إننا على يقين تام بأن التصدي لهذه الجائحة وتداعياتها لن يتم إلا بالعمل الجماعي والتآزر الدولي كما شهدنا ولا زلنا نشهد اليوم. لذا فمن الضروري علينا أن نحذو هذا السبيل وأن نسعى جميعا إلى اتخاذ التدابير والإجراءات التي من شأنها تعزيز قدراتنا على التصدي للتحديات البيئية التي أظهرتها الجائحة، وتعزيز قدراتنا بالتعافي منها بشكل يراعي المحافظة على جميع النظم البيئية واستدامتها. وفي هذا السياق نود أن نشير إلى الجهود القائمة بشأن الاستراتيجية المتوسطة المدى الجديدة لبرنامج الأمم المتحدة للبيئة، والتي نتطلع أن تكون مبنية على الدروس المستفادة من الجائحة إلى جانب ارتكازها على محور المرونة والقدرة على الصمود لمجابهة مثل هذه الظروف الحالية في المستقبل، بالإضافة إلى تعزيز الجهود للبرنامج ضمن إطار دعم البرامج والمشاريع الوطنية لدى الدول بالشكل الذي يوائم متطلبات التنمية المستدامة للبيئة. السيد الرئيس، تعتمد دولة قطر على مبدأ التخطيط الاستراتيجي في سبيل تحقيق متطلبات التنمية والتقدم، سواء على الصعيد الاقتصادي أو الاجتماعي أو البيئي، مستنيرة في ذلك برؤية دولة قطر الوطنية 2030. لذلك لم تكن الجائحة عائقا كبيرا يصعب تخطيه، وإنما تحديا ومحفزا لنا للعمل بشكل إيجابي نحو تحقيق أهدافنا الاستراتيجية للتنمية، حيث لم ندخر جهدا في الدفع بعجلة التنمية في دولة قطر بالتزامن مع الجائحة مما رافقها من تحديات، والتي كانت المفتاح نحو آفاق جديدة ومساحة للتطوير في خططنا وبرامجنا الوطنية القائمة، وذلك عبر تعزيز التدابير الوقائية بشكل يوازن بين المحافظة على ثرواتنا البشرية في ظل الجائحة والمحافظة على البيئة. كما أننا لم نغفل عن أهمية التفاعل مع المجتمع الدولي في إطار الاتفاقيات البيئية الدولية المنضمة لها دولة قطر، حيث قمنا بالمشاركة والمتابعة بكثب لجميع المستجدات والتطورات الناتجة عن إعادة توجيه البوصلة لخطط وبرامج هذه الاتفاقيات بسبب الجائحة. وفي الختام نتمنى لهذه الدورة النجاح وتحقيق أهدافها المنشودة. شكرا لكم والسلام عليكم.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Malta, you have the floor, followed by Grenada. Malta.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. The common message which comes out of this assembly is that we're facing extraordinary times, and we're all reacting with extraordinary measures. These last few days were quite important for us to share between us our common practices, sharing best practices, and tapping into each other's expertise. Pursuing collective actions for the implementation of our Agenda 2030 and achieving a sustainable future for our present and future generations. No doubt our biodiversity is at risk, and we are now running out of time to address the adverse impacts and consequences. We need to respond to such a crisis, steering socio-economic policies which fully integrate conservation and protection of biodiversity, enhancing our resilience. I believe that we should focus less on the challenges of yesterday and focus more on the solutions of tomorrow. Our vision is to continue valuing and promoting nature-based solutions, maximizing our blue and green infrastructure, protecting our ecosystem services, and reducing pollution while protecting the health of our citizens. Now, let me share with you some of the actions which Malta has been taking during the pandemic. We worked in the past few months, despite, of course, the terrible effects of COVID-19, on the promotion of measures to improve the quality of our urban environment through a number of schemes which focus on urban greening, vertically green walls, green roofs, and green retrofitting of our front gardens. Such measures aim at embracing green actions in our densely populated urban areas and mitigating, of course, urbanization in our country. These measures fully embrace sustainability by engaging with local authorities and all stakeholders by incentivizing them to implement sustainable projects with the aim of improving the well-being of our communities based on our vision, well-being until 2050. Certainly, we also aim at protecting our biodiversity by also addressing new sustainable consumption and production patterns. As an island member state at the heart of the Mediterranean, marine litter represents a threat to our rich natural ecosystem as well as towards economic sectors. This is why we are incentivizing shifts towards sustainable consumption and production by engaging our citizens and stakeholders through our Saving Our Blue campaign, cleanups and awareness campaigns promoting the ban for the import and final distribution of certain single-use plastic items. Given our limited natural resources, land mass and economies of scale, waste management represents an important priority area for which actions to further reduce waste generation and pollution already being addressed in the past few weeks. Indeed, we have launched a new waste management plan towards 2030 based on the concept of reduce, reuse, and recycle. Of course, with the objective to maximize the resource value for waste through a holistic waste management solution and adopting a collaborative approach while fostering behavioral change. We're also investing some 5% of our GDP in our infrastructure towards an eco-hive project, which will lead us to 4 state-of-the-art plants to create resources from waste. So the pandemic has given us the opportunity to build back better. We shall also be committed and work in partnership towards continuing this journey of green recovery. Together, we believe we can make a better world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Grenada, you have the floor.
Grenada, your mic is open.
Switzerland, you have the floor while we are trying to sort out technical glitches with Grenada. Switzerland, please.
Switzerland, your mic is open.
Monaco, you have the floor. We will try and connect Switzerland and Grenada. Monaco, please. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président de la 5e session de l'Assemblée des Nations Unies pour l'environnement, Madame la Directrice exécutive de l'ONU Environnement, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, chers collègues, la Principauté de Monaco entend œuvrer à la construction d'un monde post-pandémique en poursuivant le développement des axes environnementaux majeurs constitutifs d'un développement durable et solidaire. En conséquence, le gouvernement princier a pris et prendra des mesures concrètes, tant sur le plan national que sur le plan de sa contribution internationale. C'est ainsi qu'à Monaco, un cadre juridique adéquat a été mis en place par 2 codes, le Code de la mer en 1998, appréhendant le milieu marin de manière globale, et le Code de l'environnement en 2017, base légale à la protection et à la restauration de l'environnement. Parallèlement, plusieurs mesures ont également été prises à travers différentes stratégies thématiques. Dans ce cadre, une stratégie nationale pour la biodiversité viendra renforcer celle-ci à Monaco. Ainsi, malgré la situation particulière du territoire national entièrement urbanisé, la reconquête d'espaces favorables à la biodiversité, représentant environ 6,5% du territoire national au travers de mesures de renaturation de la ville, est prévue d'ici 2030. De plus, et conformément aux engagements pris dans le cadre de l'accord de Paris, Monaco réduira ses émissions de gaz à effet de serre de 55% d'ici à 2030, comparé à 1990. La Principauté vise à atteindre la neutralité carbone en 2050. Cet objectif est poursuivi, entre autres, au travers du déploiement d'une stratégie volontaire de zéro déchet plastique à usage unique. Plus largement, selon une approche intégrée concernant les déchets, Monaco déploie une stratégie visant à limiter la quantité de déchets produits et à orienter ceux-ci vers la valorisation. Cet ensemble de mesures nationales est accompagné par une action déterminée en faveur d'une coopération internationale, tant bilatérale que régionale et multilatérale. Cette aide publique au développement inclut notamment l'accord cadre de coopération stratégique signé le 3 mars 2020 entre le gouvernement princier et le Programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement. Cet accord prévoit le soutien de la Principauté à la mise en œuvre du programme du travail du PNUE dans les domaines suivants: les questions relatives aux mers et aux océans, y compris la pollution, la biodiversité, y compris la conservation des écosystèmes, tels que la gestion et la restauration des récifs coralliens, la lutte contre les changements climatiques, la mise en œuvre d'accords environnementaux multilatéraux, internationaux et régionaux. Cet accord prévoit une contribution minimum de 100 000 € par an, alignée sur la stratégie à moyen terme et le programme de travail du PNUE. La Principauté de Monaco souhaite ainsi renouveler son entier soutien au PNUE dans les actions qu'il mène aux institutions et programmes de l'Organisation des Nations Unies poursuivre son engagement pour une action multilatérale. Ainsi, en conclusion, je tiens à réaffirmer l'engagement du gouvernement princier en faveur de l'agenda 2030, dont les objectifs présentent une conception profondément novatrice du développement durable, favorisant la construction d'un monde post-pandémique, résilient et inclusif. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Excellency. I would invite Excellency Carol Dierschburg, Minister of Luxembourg, to take the floor, followed by Switzerland, then Cambodia, and Cyprus. We will try and get Grenada as soon as we can. Luxembourg, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to keep the floor today in this assembly. And I especially wish to thank the United Nations Programme for the preparation of this UNEP 5, despite these exceptional circumstances. The current COVID pandemic has reminded us of the close link between human health, animal health, environmental health, and our economies. So we must build on our experiences to emerge from this global crisis stronger, more resilient, and more responsible, strengthening our actions for nature protection in order to be able to achieve the sustainable development goals in a post-COVID time is a subject that I particularly would like to welcome. Indeed, all the reports and studies show us that we are still not on track to achieve the SDGs in 2030. The global pressure on natural resources is causing enormous degradation of ecosystems, biodiversity loss, the climate crisis, and the pollution, and we are all affected. So we have to change our economic model. We have to change our consumption and production patterns in order to protect the environment and the health of our citizens. So we all have a collective obligation to live within the limits of our planet and to move to a more inclusive, innovative, sustainable, circular, and climate-friendly economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this Nobel Forum today is perfectly in line with the Agenda 2030, and in this regard, allow me to share some good examples at a national level. First, I would like to mention the Climate Pact, which is a unique collaborative partnership between the Luxembourg government and local authorities, enabling local authorities to develop their own climate strategies and thus to emit less greenhouse gases. This has been a very successful initiative, and today I'm happy to say that all towns and municipalities have joined this pact and have committed to reduce their CO2 emissions and thus help us at a national level to reach our climate targets, which means 55% reduction of CO2 emissions for 2030 and climate neutrality for at the latest 2050. Second, the Nature Pact, a new instrument to reward and to encourage local authorities to protect biodiversity and natural resources. This includes the implementation of measures aimed to particularly improve biodiversity in urban areas, in the water, in our forest, while restoring ecological connectivity and strengthening the resilience of ecosystems. Third example, in 2018, a close collaboration between the Luxembourg government and UNEP Financial Initiative has led to the publication of the Sustainable Finance Roadmap. This year, I had the pleasure, together with our finance minister, to launch its strategy for Luxembourg Sustainable Finance Strategy. This strategy pursues the main objective of supporting the financial sector in its transition to sustainability in the context and to create concrete solutions and opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot respond to climate emergency without investing in the planet's natural capital. In this context, that Luxembourg supported the UNEP initiative to Restoration Seed Capital Facility, which aims to help managers of private investment funds to set up dedicated investment funds and forest restoration projects in developing countries, contributing to their efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and the Rio Conventions, in particular the Paris Agreement, the Land Degradation Neutrality Goals, and the Aichi biodiversity targets. Finally, we also have set up, together with the German government, the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, and the Global Covenant of Mayors, the City Climate Finance Gap Fund. This is aims to unlock investments in resilient infrastructure and developing and emerging countries. With this example, I finally would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Grenada, you have the floor, followed by Switzerland, Cambodia, Cyprus, and our last speaker will be Excellency Osama Ibrahim Fakir from Saudi Arabia. Grenada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your patience. President, Executive Secretary, Excellencies, colleagues, friends, Inga, Joyce, a pleasure to engage you once again. As we gather here today under the theme, Contribution of the Environmental Dimension of Sustainable Development to Build a Resilient and Inclusive Post-Pandemic World, we stand at a crossroads where we can decide to either continue along the path that has led to the crisis we now face, or choose to embark on a new journey towards a sustainable development recovery. The COVID pandemic has shifted our collective focus to protecting lives and livelihoods through the development of social and economic stimulus packages, creating a unique opportunity to adopt a new model that redefines and supports a better relationship with nature. We have an opportunity to align our stimulus packages with the global development frameworks, including the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, and to prioritize those actions that create green jobs and generate economic growth. The implementation of our enhanced NDCs and the inclusion of nature-based solutions in developing our response plans affords us this perfect opportunity. We have an opportunity to strengthen our capacity to implement through capacity building, policy development, monitoring systems, and enforcement mechanisms. Such a focus is essential in moving our plans from words to actions. And finally, we have an opportunity to address the critical need for greater access to affordable and predictable financing at scale and at speed to support the effective implementation of priority initiatives through both traditional and non-traditional sources. Afroz Shah summed it up earlier in his presentation. We need to do more and not just talk. We know what needs to be done. We simply need to do more, faster. As with all small island developing states, we are demonstrating our ambition. But without collective global effort and support, specifically in the areas of capacity building and climate finance, our ambition alone will not get us to where we need to be. So in closing, as we sit at this crossroads today, the task ahead of us is to collectively turn our backs on the path that has led to our current crisis, to chart a new course through action that will lead us to a sustainable recovery, that will simultaneously address our economic crisis, our climate crisis, our biodiversity crisis, and our health crisis. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, and thank you for your patience. Switzerland, you have the floor.
See that it is working now. Thanks again, and thank you a lot for your patience. Dear Madam Deputy Executive Director, Excellencies, let me first thank UNEP for organizing UNEP 5.1 in such a good manner, despite the challenges posed by COVID, allowing us to come together in these difficult circumstances and give a clear and strong signal of our commitment towards the environment. COVID is indeed posing a new challenges of which we were not aware 1 year ago. Switzerland has taken ambitious measures to address COVID-19 pandemic in a holistic manner, including by adopting a comprehensive support package to maintain employment, to safeguard wages, to support the self-employment and prevent insolvencies. The Swiss government has also agreed on a special support package to ensure that market of renewable energy would not weaken. And the Swiss parliament, at the height of the pandemic, has adopted an ambitious climate legislation. And at the international level, the Swiss government is supporting international efforts in developing countries, namely efforts to make the vaccine accessible to all countries, especially also to the poorest and most disadvantaged. But let us be clear, dear colleagues, solving the COVID crisis will not mean solving the environmental and climate crisis. And these crises may threaten our well-being and prosperity even more fundamentally than the pandemic. While the vaccine may help us to overcome the challenges posed by COVID, we cannot overcome the environmental crisis by a vaccine. This needs more. This needs ambitious policy and action. And if we do not implement such policies and actions rapidly, we may have to take even more drastic measures later than we are taking now to prevent the spread of COVID. And let us also be clear, ambitious policy and action needs international cooperation and an enabling international framework. It needs a comprehensive, coherent, effective and efficient international environmental regime that protects the human health and the environment. International environmental governance is at the core to do more and better. Ambitious international goals and agreements are essential to enable actions on a national level. And UNEP is at the heart of a robust international policy framework. The coming months provide us with a chance to achieve substantive progress. Key elements could be the decisions to launch negotiations for a convention on plastics, to establish a science policy body for chemicals and waste, or to develop guidelines to improve the sustainability of mineral resource and infrastructure sector. We have two occasions to achieve these steps. We have UNEP 5.2 and the special session where we will meet again in Nairobi to celebrate the 50th anniversary of UNEP and discuss relevant resolutions. And we will have Stockholm Plus 50, which will recall the historic milestones of the 1972 Environmental Conference. We are grateful for Sweden's initiative and look forward to taking decisive steps regarding sustainable consumption and production, which is a key element to transform our societies towards sustainability. Let me conclude that COVID has shown that we can take drastic steps if needed to prevent catastrophes. Let us act early to protect our environment and natural basis for all prosperity and well-being so that we won't have to take even more drastic steps later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. Cambodia, you have the floor, followed by Cyprus.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mr. President, honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, on behalf of the Royal Government of Cambodia, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to the UN Environment and the government of the Republic of Kenya for hosting this 5th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. Let me begin by acknowledging that the global pandemic has created many challenges for Cambodia's economic and social development. Despite these challenges, Cambodia has made substantial efforts in addressing environmental issues, both national and international levels. At the national level, I believe that strengthening action for nature to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals are key in addressing the issue of biodiversity loss, climate change, pollution, and unsustainable food systems. Cambodia has recently embarked on the review of policies, legislations, institutional mechanisms, programs, and planning relevant to sustainable development agendas, such as the Industrial Development Policy and the Climate Change Strategy, where environmental protections and resource efficiency has been clearly highlighted. Cambodia has protected areas that accounted for over 41% of our territory. Some are even turned into ecotourism destinations. Cambodia also has an interministerial mechanism, the National Council for Sustainable Development, to coordinate relevant ministries and stakeholders to integrate environmental considerations into the development plans. Cambodia is also decentralizing the task of the environmental protections and natural resources management to the subnational levels for more efficient and effective management of resources and pollution control. An environmental code draft is in final progress, which will be a comprehensive and robust regulation for environmental protection and natural resources management. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at global and regional levels, Cambodia has been an active supporter of climate change negotiations and implementers of the Paris Agreement, UNFCCC, UNCBD, Stockholm and Basel Conventions, and UN Environment Resolutions. We see this important of a need for commitments and cooperation by states and all stakeholders at global and regional levels, with technologies made available and resources allocated to support action in our world. In this assembly, Cambodia strongly expects that the ministerial declarations, resolutions, and outcomes will be affirmed in a balanced manner toward environmental sustainability for solving environmental change challenges and achieving the Sustainable Development Goal. Finally, I would like to conclude my statement by reaffirming our commitment to work together with nations, development partners, and multi-stakeholders to tackle environmental challenges effectively and efficiently. Our cooperation is much needed more than ever, especially during this global COVID-19 pandemic. Cambodia looks forward to the development and implementation of joint actions and partnerships to address environmental challenges in Cambodia, the region, and the world. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Cyprus, you have the floor.
I'd like to congratulate the Presidency and Bureau of UNEP for organizing this very important meeting, even under these difficult times, and for giving us the opportunity to discuss the contribution of the environmental dimension of sustainable development towards building a resilient and inclusive post-pandemic world. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the Republic of Cyprus has been a supporter of the new economic model launched by the European Union, the Green Deal, which is actually a development strategy that interconnects economic growth with the main environmental challenges. Additionally, the effort towards achieving the SDGs is guiding us towards a sustainable society where environment, development, and society go hand in hand for a sustainable future. After the COVID-19 crisis, we believe that green recovery is the only recovery option for a sustainable future. By relaunching the economy with the business as usual model in mind, we risk facing global climate crisis, biodiversity loss, as well as new health crises. It is our duty to strive towards climate neutrality and healthy ecosystems. To achieve this, countries as well as international organizations and businesses need to channel the necessary investments in supporting policies towards emissions reduction, pollution abatement, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable resources management within the framework of circular economy. At the European Union level, the Recovery and Resilience Facility is a very important financial tool that will support relevant reforms and investments undertaken by the European member states. The aim of this facility is to mitigate the economic and social impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and make European economies and societies more sustainable, resilient, and better prepared for the challenges and opportunities of the green and digital transitions. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, investing in green recovery plans and ensuring adequate focus on investments on reforms, especially related to green and digital transitions, will secure a sustainable and more resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. I now invite Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, you have the floor.
Saudi Arabia, you are streaming? Saudi Arabia, your mic is open.
Saudi Arabia, you have the floor. Distinguished delegates, excellencies, we have now reached the end of this leadership dialogue. I would like to express my deepest thanks for your patience, for your time. We have gone over time because of the very rich interventions from you all. I would also like to thank you for sharing your ideas and initiatives that you have implemented in your respective countries. Equally important, we appreciate your leadership and commitment in leading and implementing concrete actions which will contribute to a resilient post-pandemic world. Many thanks. And at this point, I would like to invite the Secretary to make a small announcement for the next session before we adjourn. Ulf, you have the floor.
Thank you, Joyce. So this is just to announce that the plenary of the fifth session, the online fifth session of the United Nations Environment Assembly will start just after 4 o'clock Nairobi time. So please be ready to connect at 4:10 Nairobi time for the plenary session. Thank you.
Thank you all, and this leadership dialogue session is adjourned. Many thanks.